Alrighty, and we're on.
Hey,
I'm here with Alfred Stoddart, also known as the Maker Jack.
Yeah.
And I was just saying, we're going to have to talk about why you're called the Maker Jack.
Yeah.
So let's go. What's the story behind the Maker Jack?
Yeah,
You make things.
It used to be, I made my Instagram, and I was not on social media the entirety of high school, even in college. Only in college, like, they were like, you need it so you can make network connections. And I was just like, I don't know, this thing feels off. Why is my entire identity on the internet? I don't like this.
Yeah.
I'm used to like anonymous boards and YouTube comment section, just talking the shit.
Lurking.
Oh yeah, the best times. Just say whatever you want and no one knows. Being a keyboard warrior is the best. But they're like for network connections, and some part of me was like, fine, I have to put my name and my face on this, but I'm not going to put my actual name in order. Okay. So I'm going to put like my middle name, Jack, as opposed to my first name, Alfred.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I want to put some level of like gamer taggy sort of thing on there. So I make shit. So I guess I'm Jack Maker because I'm Jack and I make shit.
Yeah.
So I was going to put my 3D art and a bunch of stuff there as a portfolio into a network. And then eventually it was called Jack the Maker, or the Maker Jack. And then Ben's just like, yeah, we're just calling you the Maker. But right before my first fight, I was like, but I was already thinking of all these like cool WWE-esque nicknames, and he's like, nah, we're going with that. I'm like, fuck.
You own it now.
You can't pick your own nickname. So that's the end of that.
Yeah, it's funny. At a lot of the events, especially at the grassroots events that we do, like that I do anyway, like Showdown, where there's a lot of guys debuting for the first time, I always go around and talk to all the corners beforehand if I'm commentating, and I always ask, is there any name you want to give this guy or girl? And they'll always come up with something to stitch their fighter up, and it's just like, okay, well, you own it now, So there's like, there's a few funny ones, like Joseph Lassanesi out of Eagles. Yeah. He's like a flyweight, right?
Yeah.
So he's this little guy, and they call him Big Sexy. And
yes, I know. Yeah, he fought Tim. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And the story behind Big Sexy was that I think when he was making his debut, there was a cameraman filming his walk. And the cameraman goes, oh, make sure you look sexy for us, right? Like, put on a sexy face and blah, 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 blah. And then, so then after that, like, he's forever known as Big Sexy, and he's like his flyweight.
It works. It's so good. I was at the last showdown, and I when they said his nickname, I'm like, that is just great. That is just perfect. Mateo Bianchino, one of my teammates, he
won
got
the title.
He won the title, and he got the nickname Sweet Wine. Yeah. Just because I forgot the announcer's name. The black announcer, he's always like at most of the events. Yes.
Yeah, Jimmy.
He was there, and he's just like, he's like, oh, what's your name? Mateo Bianchino. He's like, like a wine. I'm like, Sweet Wine. Sweet Wine's his nickname. And Mateo's like trying to get some heavy metal nickname. Like, no. Sweet Wine. That's it. I want to join this process too. It happened to me. You don't get to pick. And then he wins by like 17-second like submission. And it's like, cool. You're Sweet Wine from now on.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's sort of pull it all back so people can sort of understand a bit more about you. And then I think, probably the most notable thing coming up though for you is you got your pro debut coming, right?
Yeah.
Yep. We'll talk about that in a bit. But so what's your actual background? Like where's your family from?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Zimbabwe, Africa.
Okay.
I was born in 1993. I lived there till about 2005 when my mom's a nurse, and they were kind of like poaching nurses from Zimbabwe, which was a weird thing because it's a third world country. You've like put a bunch of sanctions on medicine, and now you're telling all the nurses they can all the medical professionals, hey, you can get a green card if you leave.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't the most ethical thing for the world's superpowers to do, but it is what they do.
So okay, let's slow down a little bit there. So Zimbabwe, can you because I have no idea what that place would have been like, especially when you were growing up at that period of time. Can you sort of describe it for us and tell me a bit about what life was like for you growing up? Yeah,
Zimbabwe was a interesting bag because around 2000 and I can remember 2000 and 2001. Around 2003, it kind of got off, but it was like any other. I wouldn't even call it a third world country. It felt like when I moved here in 2005, Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe 2002 and here were basically the same thing.
Wow,
it's like our television was for some reason 10 years back. So I grew up on 80s cartoons.
Yep.
Even though I was born in 1993, and realistically, it only should be able to remember and have that intelligent awakening at maybe 5 years old.
Yep.
But I vividly remember 80s cartoons because from the age of 5 to 6 to 7 to even 10, I was watching 80s cartoons.
So which ones?
Transformers.
Yeah, okay.
G.I. Joe. I even watched Gem. Don't judge me.
Okay.
There was a bunch of shows and stuff like that.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Of course. The Gummy Bears, of course.
Oh, Gummy Bears. Yeah, I remember Gummy Bears.
Yeah. There's just so many of them. Saber Rider. A bunch of those shows that were built off of like action toys.
Yep.
But like for some reason, when you watch them now, you realize like the morals that they were teaching in most of those ones, I'm like, this makes so much more sense than when I watch like a modern cartoon on like Cartoon Network, and it's just like a blub of random colors and mush. Yeah. And then there's a basic lesson like be nice. And it's like, then you watch like Transformers and Optimus is dying and is like, be good to people. You have a responsibility as a person to do this as a dude. I'm like, wow, that's a life lesson. The other one is like, it'd be cool if you were nice. Like it's not teaching the kids much of anything.
Yeah.
But Zimbabwe was very much, besides the entertainment, everything was bustling. It was like there was food, movies, everything. Like it was like every other place. It's just one of those things where the difference I think between a third world country or like a country like that and here is that everyone's cool till you start talking about politics, because then everyone has a team and they have a reason and a gripe. But like for the most part, things were moving. It's just when the political class did what they were doing and then the world did what it did, we started like tanking pretty hard around I think 2003, where the sanctions came in, famine, and a few other like geopolitical things that had happened on both sides. Like Zimbabwe did their own level of mistakes, and we ended up having like lots of famine, lots of like food shortages, medicine shortages. I used to have like 16 dogs, like 8 puppies and a bunch of 8 adult German Shepherds in our yard. Because the medicine got sanctioned and you weren't allowed to bring it in, they all got sick with like the same thing, and then they all kind of died. Like I think the month or so after I moved here in 2005, like all my pets died because like there was no medicine. You could take them to the vet, and the vet's just like, there's nothing we can do about it.
So why would you keep so many like?
Because you could.
Oh, okay.
Like the yards in Zimbabwe were like these massive, like I think. If you're going 6 meters, we could go 12 meter long, like fenced yards. And my parents' place had a building in the middle and then a wide enough space that you could fit 2 other buildings. And then at the back, a space again, and then granny flats.
Wow.
And this is all just like it wasn't anything special because the one next to us was special. That was like a massive 4-story mansion and a bunch of other stuff. But even we knew it's like, price-wise, this is guy who maybe is like in a slightly higher tax bracket, not an extremely high tax bracket. That is the kind of cool thing that was about Zimbabwe is like, you had that thing where you had my yard, which was like, we could call it middle class there. Then you had the upper class, and right across from it, you had the poor class. But everyone was around each other. Yep. So you would never get like the guy was living in the mansion, like thinking down to the people who were just across the road because those are his neighbors. Yeah. So you got this thing where everyone was kind of like, you give money to the homeless and all these other things. And it is a community because no one thinks, oh, that peasant, he's poor, because they're so far removed that the only thing they see from poor people is like the extreme ends, the drugs and all that other stuff. No, they're seeing like someone with less money than them live their life normally and sometimes even happier than they are sometimes right there in their mansion, and then like being friends with them. They all go shop at the same exact warehouse store. Yeah, wow. Like everyone is around each other, where I think when I came here, it became very much like, oh, yard is pretty middle class, but like I see there's no poor class whatsoever. They're in a different suburb somewhere else, way far away, and
we put them in housing commissions, basically.
Exactly. And it's like, this is like Eds. We put everyone over there, and that way we can separate them. And then the middle class is like just trying to make it and find their own path. And the rich are just like literally locked off somewhere else.
You need a passport, go across the bridge or
and it's
head
just
into
like,
the eastern suburbs.
And that was weird to me because it's like, and you can feel it when you meet people from the different sects of life. They like very much look at you like I felt like I've met with like people and like dated people who were like in the upper classes of stuff, and it's like their life experience is so much more different. The way they speak is so much more different. It's not so much that they're affluent, it's just like their experience is like different. They went to musicals, like really expensive ones with their families, and it was like nothing. That's normal to them. Yeah. And I didn't. And then like someone who's poor, I have the same experience with them. Like not poor, but like who came from a lower economic class, I have the same experience where it's like their life experience is different also. And even they are just like, well, they will look at me like, you rich asshole. And the rich people are looking at me like, you didn't go to musicals either? It's like, I can't really vibe with both of you guys because you like lived a completely different life, but we all live in the same country. This is weird.
Yeah.
Because usually like where I came from, it was the opposite. It's like everyone was a member of that particular suburb. Doesn't matter what your economic class was. You liked that guy's house because it looked nice, but you knew him. Like, if he was a dick, he's a dick. If he's a good guy, he's a good guy. You knew him. You talked to him. You saw him every day. He wasn't like he drove out of his mansion with like a blockade of cars and he's like driving down. Like you don't. People didn't segment themselves away from people others just because it's poor. It's like they picked a house. It was because like I like that location of that house. Regardless, there was no real bad neighborhoods type of thing. It's like if there's bad people and there's like. Not even bad people. It's like people who've gone through whatever they've gone through. They'll be around you in your same neighborhood, and everyone will kind of know them. Like, oh, that's. I think it's that. I think that used to be the thing everywhere else because that's the idea of the town drunk or the town clown. It's like he's the town's clown. Whereas I think now it's like, don't go to Ed's. Don't go to this suburb. That's where we put all the clowns. And it's like I don't think that's like a good way for it to function because it starts segmenting a lot of society. Like,
and then people feel ostracized.
Yes.
You know, it's almost like I don't really want to go too far into it because we start getting into this whole political discussion. But like, you know, when restrictions came in on LGAs and things like that, and it's like, oh, you're from this area. Okay, you can only travel 5 Ks from your house. Yeah. It's like, hey, hang on a second. What?
COVID was the funniest one. Like watching like it especially in America. Like America's my favorite reality TV show. It's brilliant. But like watching like the richest people on the planet, like celebrities, sing a song and be like, we're all in this together from their like $1 billion mansions. And I'm like, how tone deaf can you be? Yeah. We're definitely not all in this together. You get to live with your chef and order food in. There's people who like can't even do that. And they are also like somewhat well off. Yeah. Like you are as far from in this together, you probably haven't seen an actual like poor person or like someone with less money than you and less economic opportunities and all that than you like interact in like real life normally. Like you may have like seen a homeless dude want to stab you. You may have seen something on the street, but you've never like actually just seen someone's actual life and seen them not as like, oh, that guy, let me help him out and give him a $1. Like you'd seen him like a friend, like a person.
You actually talk to them and like
you're like, oh, understood. Cool. It's Jim. Jim lives in this modest apartment for da-da-da-da-da, but it's just Jim. He's not Jim, the poorer person than me, Jim. Yeah. And because you could just tell from the way they speak, they just never had that experience. Yeah. And it's like, if you had known you had that experience, you maybe would have like, at the very least, shut up.
So then from a community aspect, right? So when it came to schooling, everybody in the suburb, like irrespective of how wealthy or whatever, did they all go to the same schools?
Yeah, everyone, school choice was, you could go to any school you wanted to go to. And schooling was interesting there because, well, corporal punishment's still a thing, so teachers are allowed to beat you. Yep. Like my principal had a like black bullwhip and a red carpet. And if you were in trouble, you were famous, so you walked the red carpet. Like one time, I tell the story of like one of these guys was bullying me, and we both got called in the principal's office, and I'm like shitting it because my brother told me all the stories, and everyone's told me all the stories, and I'm walking on the red carpet, and she's just like, "Get off," and I'm like, I don't know that the red carpet means like it's a bad thing to be on it, so I'm getting off like, fuck, what did I do? I'm the one who got my lunch, and then he's about to get off also, the guy who bullied me, and she's like, no, you stay on, and she's like, what happened? And he's like. And she is like, yeah, you took my lunchbox. Like, did you like, and you didn't lie because it would make it worse. Yeah. So like, you just told the truth. Whereas when I came here, it was like, people were swearing at the teachers. They were lying. You wouldn't even swear if you were in the corner of the school far away from any human being. You'd be afraid like a teacher would pop out of the trees. Yeah. Like, so it's like, because it's, I don't think it's just because of the corporal punishment. I think it also, there's just the pressure of school being a thing. We had like 100% literacy rate when it came to in Zimbabwe. Yep. For like, I think we still do. Like everyone could speak and write English really well.
Wow.
Like literacy became a thing, and so did math and most of the basic things, because it is one of those things where when you are going through a third world country, even the food, it's like staples, things that work. You're not going to feed people the thing that's commercially viable because it's tasty, but you've put a whole bunch of it's like people are on the edge of starvation.
Yeah, you go with the necessities.
Yes, and then the same thing happens with schools. Like, we need workers. It's a developing country, not a broken country. So we need people to develop it the entire time. So we need to. So the downside is, like, you lose stuff like learning creative stuff, but learning like 3D art. I wouldn't have never have learned it there, because it's just like, we don't need that. We need someone to help develop the country. Do you do software? Do you do this? Do you do hardware? What can you do that will, like, brick and mortar build the country? What, you want to make 3D toys for video games? Oh, okay. There's no one's playing video games here. Yeah, we need farming equipment. There's a market for this, but also we don't want that market to be a thing. Yeah. We don't want.
Well, it's not there yet. It hasn't developed to that point, right? So it's I think, when it comes to areas where like countries are behind, it's people always, I think the common thread is that education is the key to helping a country to advance, right? Yes. And then through education, then we get, like, I guess, we create new industries, right? So once you can cover your basics of food, shelter, water, clothes, right? You cover those essentials. Then it's like, now you can start thinking about, okay, now how do we improve life? And so that's sort of like how, when you look at how we've grown these massive capital cities in Australia, and we've got all these industries that don't necessarily relate to food, shelter, water, and clothes. Yeah. Like, we start now going into software and internet businesses and all of these different kinds of things, real estate. Like, we create new industries where in the past it would have been like, we're bartering food for maybe like some tools, right? So, the fishermen need fishing hooks. So the person that makes the fishing hooks would barter their fishing hooks for some fish so they can eat, and everything's based on trade. And then we come to this point where it's like, oh, well, we'll now exchange everything for money. And then instead, we apply different values to this, and we create new industries, because now we can produce all this food, but we got to get it somewhere. So now we need a whole logistics industry that's built around transporting this food to get it to these epicenters of civilization. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, well, now we've got all these people living in these areas. Farming is no longer a viable enterprise. You can't be a farmer if you're living in an apartment block. So what kind of work can we create for these people to then, contribute to society? Yeah. And as we start, like, spiraling in our creating new industries for new problems, at some point we forget, like, the base problem. Yeah. At the very least, and you see it kind of happening in, like, a little bit of the Western side, and here is, like, the education stops being very much about being like, oh, we need to educate you to be, like, the basics first, then you can spiral off to whatever you want to spiral off. Well, it starts being like maths, right? It's like, oh, why do I need to learn how to do my multiplication? I can use a calculator.
Yeah. And, right? And it's like, you forget the reason, like, the reason you need these base things is because, like, at the very least, everything you're trying to work off of, and most people realize it when they come out of high school, is like, everything stops being like, oh, cool, we're going to teach you all this from the beginning. It starts being like, yeah, this entire half is assumed knowledge. We hope you figured it out. We're moving from here on. If you haven't figured it out, catch up. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, that's usually where people get a shock. But that kind of worked because the amount of things that had to be done once you hit the real world needed, you just like, we can't be teaching you back again. But now you're reaching a situation where even in high school, kind of getting not taught things that are supposed to even be assumed knowledge. And by the time you get into the real world, you're like, I have this particular degree that does literally nothing. Like, no one's going to hire me because the people who get hired in this particular degree get hired off of experience, not off of, like, the piece of paper they have. And I've just wasted X amount of money and X amount of time. And it's like a system that's kind of built that way is a system I feel like has forgotten the point of educating people. So Zimbabwe's system for education was, like, strict as all hell, but it worked in, like, what their goal was.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I have an older brother, a little brother, and an older sister as well.
Okay, so 4 of you in the family.
Yes.
Yep. And then, so I guess, just speaking to when you were growing up in Zimbabwe, like, what was that like at home? So I guess, did you guys have your own rooms, or how big was your place from that perspective?
Me, my little brother and my older brother shared a room, and my sister had her own room, and my parents had their own room. And that was the house. That was the house, and it was kind of like 90s. It's like you go outside, you play with stuff. We didn't really have that many toys, which was interesting because of the way my dad raised me. We were well off. Like, I think we were more well off than the guy across the road who had a mansion. But like, my dad did not want us to like live like that.
So what did your dad do for work?
He was the CEO of the pension fund. Not the CEO of the pension fund. He was one of the board of directors for the pension fund in Zimbabwe. He did virtually everything. And my dad's like one of those people who, we always joke, like, if he came here in 2005 or 2002, he'd be running the country because he's like an extreme. He can talk to anyone, like anyone on the planet. He's one of those people who, when he's in an elevator, if it's like going, it's just 20 floors, like by the time he reaches the 20th floor, everyone in the elevator like knows him, knows his name, and they've had a conversation with him. Yeah. And he can, and it's not like the grading type where it's like, this guy won't be quiet. It's like, oh, he's actually talking to me. Oh, I want, and business is like one of his main things. He's really, really good at it. I call him a crook by complete jokes, but like, yeah, it works. It's like,
so he's actually legitimately good at business.
Yeah. Oh yeah, extremely.
So then, when your mum got the green card to come over because she's a nurse, your father didn't come over at the same time? Or?
Yeah, he came. My mom came over in 2003, and then she brought us over in 2005 when she finally got the citizenship and everything like that. My dad retired from his job early during that. It was he retired from his job. I think 2005 as well. He had like basically the way he had structured everything by like promoting people above him who were like people he had done, like they owed him something. So like when he says like, I'm leaving, they're like, oh, cool, you're going to leave? Because they're like, oh, the monkey's off our back. Yeah. So they're just like, oh, you're going to leave? What do you need? We'll sign it. We'll sign it right away. You want to leave like this? And they didn't realize what they were signing half the time. Yeah. And by the end of it, it's just like, he left, and he left like a bandit, if I should say it that way. Yeah, yeah. But so then my dad and my mom moved here. My mom ended up taking over because now she's working as a nurse, and nurses make a lot of money. My dad was working security for a fair bit. It's like, that is who my dad is. Like it's work. He wants to work all the time.
Yeah, has to keep busy.
Yes, because like this is a guy who's going from, and it shows you like sort of the way the economic class sort of blends, where it's like, this is a guy who's like in very expensive suits with very expensive cars talking to very expensive people. And then he's like, I need a job. I'm going to go do security at Myers. Like within like 5 or 6 months apart from each other. Wow. And no pride kicked in, like, nope, I can't. For him, pride was, I can't work. Yeah. So, I won't work. So, yeah, it's why it was devastating. He got, on his way back, I think it was from a birthday party, from one of his jobs, he got assaulted by some lowlife in like Lamia, and it broke his leg. Oh. He's still recovering from that. That happened in like 2017, I think, around then. He's still recovering from it, from like heart problems, facial fractures, and a bunch of other things. And like it was weird watching sort of like the legal system be, because the guy, as they were in court, they were saying my dad's already walking and in rehab when he had showed up in court like on a stroller with his leg in a cast from it just being snapped in half. Like let's say could have been like a month later. Wow. And they were like already kind of like trying to shuffle it along, like, oh, it's over. Yeah, he's doing fine. How about we give him probation? And it's like, what do you mean it's over? He's right there with a broken leg. Yeah. He can't walk. The medical, like, why is this being railroaded? And also we have that one punch law, and it's like, it wasn't being applied at all. The guy ended up getting like 2 years in prison and then didn't actually do him because he got probation like right away. Wow. Like, I think he got like house arrest and then some kind of probation and then community service for good behavior or something. But he didn't do any of it.
Was he drunk at the time or something?
No, he was like fully sober. Him and his friend were harassing some woman. Yeah. And my dad still had the jacket on which said security on the back. Yeah. So she's walking carriages, and then she goes and like just sits next to my dad. Yeah. Which is like racially playing. It's like people don't like randomly sit next to a big black guy on a even if it's like a packed train or something. It's like you're sitting by yourself. They usually like sit on the other side. Yeah. But like she went and like just sat next to him, and they were like then they took offense to that. So when my dad's jumping off the train at Lamia, they jump off with him. One distracts him, the other one like punches him in the face, and like he falls, and he fell like an inch or two away from the actual train as it started moving. Yeah. So his leg like snapped to the side, and he fell like head first, bounced off the floor.
Yep.
And it was a screwed up situation. And then watching kind of it get kind of brushed under the rug and then just pushed aside, like, yeah, well, you got your victims of crime. Moving on. It's like. Why isn't the guy arrested? Why isn't he in jail for longer? Why are you trying to rush this along as quickly as it is? Because like me at the time I was training as well, so I know what head trauma is, and I'm like, why are you trying to rush this along like it's just gonna go away? Yeah. And then even then he was seeing a psychologist at the time, and at least from the psychologist was like coming off like, oh, he has PTSD and a bunch of other stuff, and it's like none of this is being addressed or brought up. And the downside, I think the worst part on his end was like that fact that like he couldn't work and still can't really work at the moment. And it's like, yeah,
that's the depressing part for him.
Yeah, that's the part of it. We find something to do at home. Like he'll always find something to do. He was like in the hospital for like a really bad infection, a heart infection, to the point like he was at like a 95% infection rate. Like 5% more, he would have been dead. Wow. And then he had a heart operation and everything. So right before the heart operation, when they were just pumping him full of antibiotics for like weeks at that point, because they're like, we don't know what we're going to do. And they're checking. And then they eventually found that the heart valve had been infected, and that was what was actually spreading the bacteria everywhere. Yeah.
How do you get a heart infection?
Because he had like a leaky valve, because I think when he got assaulted, he broke his leg. He ended up on a bunch of other pills. He had a leaky valve already. Those pills and the antibiotics and a bunch of other things it got infected, that valve. Wow. And that valve, was just a piece of it was just infected and kept like pumping everywhere else. Yep. And he called me randomly in the middle of the night, like right after training around like I think 9. And he's just like, yeah, I don't know where I am half the time. I wake up and was like, what's going on? And then I called my mom, called my dad, and called my mom, called my little brother. And by the next day, he had like gone into the hospital, and they like checked it. And by the end of the week, it was like, oh yeah, if he had waited a couple more days, he wouldn't have made it. Yep. But on his end, like, because he finds something to do. 2 days in, like I don't know, 4 or 5 days into the hospital, like he still has like antibiotics and stuff in him. My mom just like wakes up, and because she's constantly traveling to the hospital. Yep. She wakes up, she's about to go to the hospital, and she sees him outside by the pool cleaning the pool. And she's like, what are you doing? There's no way they checked you out. How the fuck did you get here? Yeah. And he's just like, I needed to grab my papers. And like, I would have brought them to you. He's like, yeah, I just ordered Uber. I was going to come and do it. Like, okay, fine. You needed to grab your papers. Why are you cleaning the pool? Yeah. Just trying to, the studio, preoccupied. How funny. So when it came time for you guys to come to Australia, how did your parents approach that conversation? Did they just say, oh, we're moving? Like, how did you take it? Like, were you upset at all, or? I didn't even know what Australia was, but it was one of those show-off points. It's just like, yeah, I'm going to Australia, everybody. And they're just like, you're going to what? I didn't know what Australia was. I was just saying it because it gave me clout at the time. That's funny. Like, everyone's big thing in Zimbabwe was just claiming they're from somewhere else or they're going to somewhere else. Okay. It's like, oh, I've got girlfriends in Ireland. It's all good. I'm going to go to Ireland. I'm going to this. I'm going to that. Everyone's just saying shit that we both know is like, come on, man, we ain't going nowhere. I've seen you around for like 4 years in a row. You haven't gone anywhere. So you would have been, what, 12 at the time or something? Yeah, I was like 12. So like all of like me being 11, which was I was in year 6 because there's 7 years of primary school. Yep. So like in year 6, I'm like saying like, I'm going to Australia. And they're just like, yeah, we've been hearing this for about a year now. Yeah. We know it's not happening. You can stop bullshitting. And then like the day before I leave, I'm like, oh, by the way, this is my last day. I'm going to Australia. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, I actually am. You won't see me again. It's like, sure. And then I was like, the teacher gets up and is like, yeah, I'll say goodbye to Alvin. They're like, wait, what? You're actually leaving? And now all of a sudden, all the cool clout points were coming in like, what's it going to be like? I'm like, fuck you guys, I have to go right now. My parents are outside. I get like 10 seconds of this clout and then I get to leave. I've been trying to get a year's worth of clout and you people wouldn't believe me. Too funny. Yeah. So were you were more excited to go than anything else? Like, were you? It was different. Yeah, I was excited to go because I didn't know. My mom gave me some scare tactics of like, they hang you if you bring drugs in. And I'm like, oh my God, this seems so bad. You're 12 years old. Yeah, I know. What drugs are you bringing in? I don't know. That's the funniest part is like my brain never computed that I don't do drugs and that I've never seen drugs. And like Zimbabwe didn't have a drug problem at all. So like even the idea of like people, it had an alcohol problem, but not drugs. So like I don't know why when you're a kid, any irrational scare becomes reality, even if you don't do it. If you're a kid and your mom's like, don't drive a car, but you're like 2 years old, you're like, oh my God, cars. What if I drive a car tomorrow and I get arrested? It's like, you don't factor in the fact that like you physically can't do it. You just factor in like, they do what? I could get in trouble. Or like, I think my brain went, if that is the level they're willing to go for that, I'm already a bad kid. Like, I get yelled at for doing dumb stuff. Oh, what are they going to do to me? Throw me in prison because I do it bad? Oh, no, what am I? But, like, yeah, it's like I was super excited to come here for the most part. Didn't know. It took me a while to actually sort out the culture shock once I got in. Like, I think I just kind of, like, we hit the ground running. My older brother was older and mature, and, like, he kind of got it pretty quickly. My little brother was young enough that, like, it was just like meeting new friends. I think he was like around 5 or 6. Not 5 or 6. Yeah, 5 or 6. But for me, I was in that middle period where I was like 12 and my whole world had just changed. I didn't actually end up addressing that till like I did online college after high school. And for like 3 years, basically, I was like a shut-in. I left the house for a cumulative 1 month, if you count all the hours in 3 years. And some of those hours is me getting out of the house and going to the mailbox and coming back. So like,
so why? Like, what, were you depressed or like what?
No, I was I'm a homebody for the most part, and I was just like enjoying like manga and the internet. Like, I'm a 4chan kid and shit, so it's just like messing around on the internet, like trolling people is just the most fun stuff ever. But at the same time, it was one of those situations where I think I didn't realize, and I realized it midway through, like, oh, I hadn't ever addressed the fact that my world literally shifted. Like, Zimbabwe to Australia may have been similar in the things that are available in 2005, but like in 2002, by 2005 they were completely different worlds even then. But like, people-wise, like just that thing of the fact that you see the poor, you see and you talk to people. Like, one of my best friends was from a poorer neighborhood, then was from a poorer house than I was, across the road from me. And then we all met up and went to the back end where there was the richer area, and we met up with those people, and we all played the same games. And we talked the same, and there was that understanding. Whereas like here is like even that little thing was like completely off. There's like race differences, there's religion differences, and everyone's in their camps and they're stuck there. And like just that level of culture shock and a bunch of different like ways that it was just completely different. Well, I never addressed it because I was like 12. So I was like, it was my main priority was like, now you go to school. You're in high school. Now you finish high school. Hurry up and pass the things. What are you going to do after high school, Alfred? It's almost finishing. And it's just like, you have to hit the ground running and you never get a chance to actually stop and figure out. So that when they'd ask you like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to pass the next grade as quickly as possible because I don't know what the hell any of you people are talking about half the time. And it's like, yeah, those 3 years let me like really like center myself and realize like where I am in this particular world and like how those two worlds are different. And yeah, it let me center a bunch of different things. But for the most part, like that culture shock it's really strong when you're in that middle period. If you're like spent 12 years of your developing life somewhere else and then suddenly we're here and there wasn't, because the Zimbabwe to here, the difference is way too far. Like there's no bridge because we also my parents didn't want us like moving to an area full of other Zimbabweans so we could become Zimbabweans in Australia. It was like, no, we're Australians now. We're going to move to a nice suburb, not intentionally trying to go move next to a bunch of other Australians, but we're moving to a nice suburb. We don't care where it is, but we also don't want to like go into an enclave of other people who are just like us, because then we're just going to build little Zimbabwe somewhere else. And that, if we wanted to do that, we'd just stay there.
In Zimbabwe,
So there was that situation where it was just like, my world's completely shifted. Like everyone was talking about different things. Like there was no connection. And also because like if I'm dealing with kids, I grew up on 80s cartoons. They grew up on like 2005 cartoons. So even like cartoons and entertainment, I couldn't even relate on because it's just like we have no throughway whatsoever. I'm grown up on Charlie Chaplin and a bunch of stuff from like the 60s and the 80s and like cartoons and stuff, and then watching the same movies, but like maybe a year or two later, because movies weren't that big of a thing for me. It's like, I have nothing to relate to you guys' conversation, and everyone's jumping on social medias and all that. I'm like, I can barely use a computer, and I don't want to at the moment. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't even have a phone. And I'm like, yeah, it was enough of a culture shock where it's just like, I think I just focused on like finishing the school part because it was the simplest thing. It's a routine. It's like, go to school 6 hours, pay attention to teacher, pass thing, go thing, do. Make some social friends based off of your opinions, and if they vibe, but don't actually address your end of things, which is like the fact that like you're talking to completely different people. There was two colored people at all who I'd ever seen at all for the first 12 years of my life. Like everyone else was just black Africans. So like when it comes to kids, it was like the only time and now all of a sudden it's the complete opposite. It's like everyone's lighter colored and white or Arab or anything like that. And there's maybe 2 black people in the entire school, and they're from different countries than I'm from. So even they don't want to, like, they can't even relate.
How funny.
Yeah. It was a wild time. But yeah, it took a little bit to adjust, but once I adjusted, I figured it out pretty well. But yeah. So
then, from your parents' perspective, like, did they ever give you any guidance in terms of what they wanted you to do, or did they have any suggestions for you, like when you were going through high school trying to work out, what did you want to do?
Not really. They were just like, they'd ask, but like, I think for their side, it was because I'm just following the rat race. Like, I think the best thing that happened to me is the fact that I lost my ATAR being kind of dumb and swapping classes. Like, I was in chemistry and I was like, I don't like this, and I moved. So I had biology, chemistry, and one other math or something like that, which was going to give me an ATAR. And I was going through it and I was just like, I'm doing 2 sciences. I might as well just drop this one and move to and go do metal work. And not realizing it cut my ATAR out. And no one said anything because I wasn't going to like the best high school. But like, I think they did. I think
you didn't have enough units. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think they did say it, but it was like, they didn't say it. It was in the paperwork for swapping your class that you would, like, if you don't have this many units, you lose your ATAR. And like, I don't think they like said it like, hey, like you can't go to uni directly from here if you do that. Because I think if I did, I would have stayed.
That's a pretty fucking big oversight.
I know, right? Oh, well, I went to Liverpool Boys High School. My first day at Liverpool Boys High School, 20 kids jumped one kid in like the park on the way home. And the cops were just there like, we'll see who wins. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the one dude is not going to win this fight. And then they just like sort of arrested maybe 5 or 6 of them. And the other ones got to let go. They didn't even run away from the cops when they came through once they finished like beating this dude. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this is where I'm at. Okay, put my head down and focus on school.
Wow. Okay. So that was a massive culture shock then.
Yeah, it was wild. Like my first culture shock was like watching people like swear at the teachers and then swear at each other, like openly right next to the teachers in primary school. Yeah, I'm going from like, you couldn't even do that outside of school hours out of fear, and it's like, okay, what the fuck's going on? I don't get it. Like some of it was like fear that they'd hit you, but then there was also like there's a respect thing there. Yeah, like Zimbabwe's like the Zimbabwe teachers are very built on like, oh, like you're gonna call me sir. Yeah. Because it's a respect thing. They tell you the reason why you're gonna do it. Like they elaborate like fully and you get it. Oh, this is a respect thing. And you understand when you misstep there, you're being purposefully disrespectful. You're not making a mistake and being like, hi, Mr. Naji. You're doing that on purpose. So you earned your ass whoopings. And that's where the fear came from there. But like that level of respect is like then seeing that not exist whatsoever for teachers was like a wild thing to see, because I'm like, what's going on? Like, and as a kid, usually when you see that, when you're coming from my perspective, and even when most perspective, when you see someone else disrespecting someone else, as a kid, you start thinking that person isn't worthy of respect. That's why they're letting this person disrespect them. Yeah. So then I start losing respect for these teachers because I'm like, why are you letting this like fucking child talk to you like this?
Well, they're not allowed to hit you.
It's like, why aren't you calling his parents? Why aren't you sending him out? Because at this point, they're just so defeated because they've been dealing with this kid since like year 1 or whatever he is, that they're not going to like call him out because now it's a distraction to the class. You get out of the class. You do this. Reprimand him. It's better to just ignore it, his outburst, and just like let it slide. And they do it with the little things. Like he calls them by their name. He makes a comment here, and it's like the little thing starts spiraling to a point where this kid loses complete respect for the teacher. Yeah. To the point that like now this kid's just saying whatever he wants whenever he wants. and they don't realize like the rest of the class then sees it like, oh, if you're letting him disrespect you, that means you must not be worth respect. As a kid, that's kind of like the inherent thing that like flows through your brain. It's like when you see everyone else, like when someone like speaks and the adults all turn to him, you start turning also and like dress up all the time. Like, oh, like I'm afraid of these people and they're afraid of that person. There must be a reason why. Yeah. Whereas like he yells and everyone just kind of groans and like doesn't like, oh, they're all disrespecting him. He must not be worth much because everyone, if you're a kid, you get your cues from how the adults are treating, being taught by the other kids, and the other kids are treating the adults, and then also how the other adults are treating the other adults. So he's like, it's there was an interesting thing, but for the most part, my parents didn't give me much advice because I think for them, I was doing the thing that I was doing. It's like, oh, what are you gonna do next? I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do primary school, past that, then I'm gonna do high school, then I'm gonna do uni. They didn't ask what I was going to do in either of those things. Yeah. They're just like, oh, he's going through the process. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
And so then when you didn't get an ATAR, then what happened with your process there? Because that would have been like, what do you mean I don't get an ATAR?
I found out I wasn't going to get an ATAR like midway through the year. And I was like, okay, that's off. What am I going to do? I think I'll get a factory job. I want something super simple where I can turn my brain off so I can get home to play video games. Okay. So just literally grab a thing, stick a thing, move. Grab a thing, stick a thing, move. And it was just like my dad after high school ended, I was like, I'll take a gap year before I sequestered myself into this mind-numbing like field. Because at the time I wasn't training. I had interest in like watching. I'd been watching kung fu movies and stuff since I was like way young, like old school Jackie Chan movies and just old school like dubbed over kung fu movies. So I was always interested in martial arts, but like I wasn't training that much. I had a heavy bag, maybe I think at the time, and my dad's just like, "So what are you gonna do?" I'm like, "Shit, I'm gonna take a gap year. I'm gonna relax." He's like, "You haven't done anything for like 2 months since high school ended. What are you gonna do? Do something." I'm like, and then he's like, "Cool, figure out a step right away." And he's the one who put the fire on me, just like, go do it. I'm like, no, I'm going to take a gap year. It's like, to do what? You don't even know what you're going to do. Figure it out. And I'm like, you never know. I could become a fighter, but you're not doing any of the process. Like, you're not doing anything. Figure it out. And it's like, by the end of like the day, I had like, he's like, oh, you're going to go see a career advisor. And I saw a career advisor in a TAFE close to where I lived. And he was just like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I guess I want to create shit. And he's like, okay, here are your options. Architecture, this and that. And it was interesting because he was a career advisor in a TAFE. I went to Liverpool Boys High School. We lived in Campbelltown, so the career advisor was around Campbelltown. Because he had never seen me in high school or anything like that, or seen my results, he gave me advice based off of what I said I wanted to do, not what he saw academically and thought, oh, this is what you're capable of doing. Yeah. And because of that, I actually took him seriously because I didn't realize I didn't realize he was doing that. I thought he was just like genuinely being like, oh, yeah, sure, you could be an architect if you want to. And like it's something, there's something to that. Yeah. That idea of like, after a while, the teachers kind of see the way you've gone, like, this guy is only capable of doing this particular thing. Because if you asked any of my teachers, any of them, and you saw any of my results and said 3D artist or fighter, mostly 3D artist. The fighter thing, I don't think any of them would have ever thought of it ever because I was a super pushover in high school. But like the 3D artist thing, that have been like, hell no. He doesn't know the math. He won't know the math. He won't know the science. He won't know the X, Y, Z. He won't have the focus on all these other things. But it's like, the moment that guy told me I could, he's like, you can do architecture, you can do engineering, you can do 3D art. And I was like, 3D art, like video games? He's like, yeah, you can do video games. And I'm like, wasn't it math? Isn't that binary, ones and twos? It's going to be hard. He's like, you should probably look it up. And he like gave me some papers and stuff.
I laugh because binaries is zeros and ones. Yeah. Not ones and twos.
Yeah, that's literally what I thought like 3D art was. Like everything in the 3D art sphere, I thought was literally built off someone just start going 110, 110, 110, and then after a while of doing the right sequence of 110s, an image popped up. Yeah, and when you realize like it's not that, it's actually like there's a 3D software program, bro, and you're like learning how to do the software. I'm like, oh, this is video games. Yeah. I played a shit ton of video games. I know how to deal with software, and like. Funny enough, because I played a shit ton of video games, the one thing through all of my schooling I thought had no bearing whatsoever on my future, I can adapt to any software instantly. No matter what it is, no matter what 3D program, 2D program, it's like figuring out controls in my head, and it then translated to fighting, because like fighting kind of became the same thing. It's like, oh, all I have to do is figure out the controls. This is how you throw a jab. This is the parameters needed for the jab. Now it's a fighting game. I play Tekken all the time. This is easy. I can figure this out pretty easily.
So, I find that interesting, especially from the career advisor perspective, because I think when you think about your friends in high school, right, you don't really think about, what people become, right? Like, when I think of people in high school, you're still a baby.
Yeah.
Right? You have no idea. You've got like all these things that you could potentially do. But the big question is always, what is it that you actually want to do?
Yeah.
Right? And it's, I found it interesting that, you had teachers that would, I think that probably happens at most schools, where teachers would look at a kid and go, oh, they don't have the grades to do this or that. And they probably think more in terms of those lines. But I think anytime you have a real sort of obsession with something, then you can achieve it. It's just, you just got to be obsessed with it. And part of the motivation to actually do things is actually finding that obsession, right? You can always, there's two possible ways you can look at obsession. Obsession can be a negative thing, in which terms it's called an addiction, right? Like if you're addicted to drugs or addicted to, pornography, whatever, you can name all those negative things, gambling, alcohol, all those things would be, when you use the word addiction, it's a negative sense. But when you use the word obsession, it's a positive sense. You can be obsessed about martial arts. You can be obsessed about your work. You can be obsessed about anything, right? So yeah, I really like that sort of thinking in terms of, take away the actual parameters in terms of what you think you're constrained to, and actually just think about, okay, what is it that you actually want to do? That's a great starting basis. And I think that career advisor, unintentionally, whether it's intentional or not, like that's a great way to look at anybody, right? Like if I don't know this particular person and they're coming to me and asking me for career advice, it's like, okay, well, forget about what your marks are. Let's actually think about what is it in life that you actually enjoy. And this is actually something that would come up a lot when I was working in the automotive industry, because when I would mentor employees, people, when you interview them for a job, right, they always, oh yeah, I'm really interested in the job and blah, 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 blah. And then when you actually try and mentor somebody, you can't just talk purely about the job. The job is just one aspect of their life, right? There can be so many other things going on. And this applies to almost any vocation, right? Whether it's fighting, whether it's 3D art, whatever industry that you're working in. You can't just live and breathe this one thing day in, day out for an indefinite amount of time, right? You can do it for a short period of time. You could probably even do it for a slightly extended period of time. You could do it for, you might even be able to get away with, say, for up to 5 years of it, depending on your personality. But at the end of those 5 years, you're going to come to this conclusion of, is there more to life than this? Because no matter how exciting or interesting something appears at the start, eventually the edge gets taken off it. It starts to become a little bit dull and boring. And then you're always looking for new ways to sort of, elevate the experience, right? So, fighting is definitely like one of those things, because when most people, before they've ever had their first fight, they get into training and they go, training can be very overwhelming because there's so many different things to learn and blah, 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 and techniques. And, you just get the crap beaten out of you for whatever period of time. Then you get to this point where training feels like normal. And then it's like, okay, I need the next experience, which might be, okay, let's go and compete, where it's a jiu-jitsu, comp, a kickboxing, MMA, whatever, you name it, right? Then you go and compete once, and then you go and compete a few times, and then you actually realize, oh, okay, that's sort of become fairly normal now. It's like, all you can do is just dial up the lights and dial up the pressure and dial up the crowd. But it becomes much of a muchness, and people keep going and trying to chase like these other highs in relation to that pathway. But you still need to also find things outside of that as well,
Yes.
And I always think about this because I feel like, it's that real sort of warrior monk kind of mindset where, yes, it's great to be athletic and have, athletic pursuits, but you also need to sharpen your mind in other things, whether it's having creative outlets or things like, some people say, oh, I'm not creative, but then, they might be great at gardening as an example, right?
Yeah.
And that's still a creative outlet. They might be really good at horticulture. They might be really good at cooking. That's still something creative. You're taking ingredients and you're piecing them together. So I always find it, that the most well-balanced people, have these different facets in their life that they can go and say, okay, yeah, I do this, but I also do this. And it's funny because especially when I was starting my career, the advice that I got was very much, oh, you got to focus. And I think it's great advice for that period of time. But we're in a very different world now where there's so much information available that you know, as an example, Hayden Limeby, I was chatting with him this morning at GE, and he was at the desk working on the computer. And Hayden, for people that don't know Hayden, he's a athlete. Like, he's built like a brick shit house. At one of the, you know, probably like people might bring this up, but yeah, like he put a Kimura on a guy at one of the Grapple Manias.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the guy didn't tap, and Hayden snapped his arm, and it's like everybody's like shuddering, and you could hear it, right? And so, you know, when you look at Hayden, you look at this guy, you know, he's like a blocky little stocky, not he's little, but like he's a blocky athletic guy, muscular athletic guy. And here he is on the computer trying to piece together this video. And I go, "Are you doing video editing?" And he goes, "Man, I got no fucking idea what I'm doing." I just started laughing, and I'm like, "Oh, this is good, right?" And I was like, "Oh, you know, you can always Google it or YouTube it to try and find what you need to do." And he's like, "Oh yeah, look," and he's like pulled up YouTube and he goes, "This is what I'm watching. Teach me how to do this." And I go, "I love it. Like, I absolutely love it, because, you know, you can be a great, you know, athlete, but you need to have these other pursuits that sort of, you know, get your brain thinking in a different way." And he's like, "Mate, before I started doing this, I had no idea what a computer was." Like, he's like upfront about it. He's like, "But this is," you know, he's actually getting into it, and you can see like there's that almost like childlike excitement about doing something. So, you know, for me, whenever I talk to people, I'm always interested in trying to find out, you know, what are those other things that drive them, because it's great to be focused, right? Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know, there are guys that will be like, you know, I want to be a world champion, or I want to be this, or I want to be that. Yeah, that's fantastic. But you also got to think about, okay, and it's not to say that it needs to be a distraction, right? It's not to say you're sacrificing this to go and do this, but you need to have something else that also gets your mind off things.
Yes.
Right? You need to have something that could be, you know, some contributes to rest and recovery, whether it's playing video games. Like that was a pastime of mine as well. But then I've realized I've got like a really addictive personality, so I can't touch them anymore. Like if I start, like it just starts as, you know, I'll just play one game, and then it will become like, oh, you know, I'll play one game a day. Like, I think that's reasonable. Yeah. It's like saying I'll have a coffee a day. Yeah. But before you know it, you know, that one game a day becomes
caffeine
3.
Addiction.
Yeah, it becomes 3. And the next thing you know, every waking moment that you don't have anything, that you can get away from, like for me, get away from the kids or whatever. Oh, I'm going to play this game, right?
Yep,
and then it'll be like,
thing.
Yeah. So then it's like, oh, shit, I can't do this at all. I have to like delete them all off my computer. I can't do that because, you know, I'm opening this gateway. And look, you know, if I had all the time in the world and I didn't have other things that I wanted to pursue, I could probably add that to the list.
Yes.
But, you know, when my priorities list is these core specific things, like, you know, I still want a podcast, I want to train, I want to do all these other things and, you know, spend time with my kids and all that. Well, something's got to give, right? Yeah. And then most of the time it ends up being sleep, and sleep ends up being your recovery. And that recovery then impacts all the other things that you want to do the next day. So that was sort of how I go through these peaks and troughs. You know, like sometimes it's like when I'm really sort of burnt out, it's like, okay, all right, fuck it, we'll reinstall this one game, right? And then you play it for a bit. Maybe I get a week out of it. And even my wife, like, and she'll say, "What are you doing?" And she knows, like, she's seen me do this like 3, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, probably 10 times over the years, where it's like I'll download a new game or something. And I'll go, I'm just gonna play for a bit, and then she'll see like I get obsessed, and then she always says to me, you realize you're gonna hate yourself after. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna hate myself.
I just need a little side thing.
And then you know, like give it a week, 2 weeks, and then once, you know, I go through that heavily obsessed phase, and then it's like, okay, I got to delete this shit. I can't do it anymore.
Yep. I have the same thing with video games where, like, I used to play hundreds of hours a day, a week even. It was not a day, obviously, but like a week, it was easy. But now I think the balance I found is like, I'll play story games that have a start and a finish. So like I just finished God of War, for instance. So I can't, like, as addicted as I could possibly come, there's a cap to this. It will end. Whereas like when I play if I play like an NBA game or a sports game where you can just literally play it every single day forever and like create a new character, build that one up to 99, then do it again and again, I get the same thing where I'm just like, I'm doing this every day. I'm like, I want to get home so I can play the game over and over again. But I end up getting I inadvertently get your thing, which is like where I don't play because I'm like, well, I want to play God of War and I actually want to experience the story and finish it.
Yeah.
I don't have a week.
Yeah.
So like if it was like I could play it for those 2-3 hours, but then I want to play it again tomorrow.
Exactly.
And tomorrow I'll have 3 training sessions. Okay. I just don't. So I just end up by like just by the disappointment of knowing I can't play it all the way, I just don't start.
Yeah.
So like I've played The Witcher 3, for instance, a really good game, and like I can't. I want to pick it back up, and like I'm on a second playthrough, and I downloaded and bought all this like expansion packs way before that are like really really good. But I'm like I want to actually sit in it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I don't have the time to spend like I don't have 5 hours consistently every single day in a row.
Yeah.
Whereas I might have 5 hours today, but I won't have any tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's where I'm like, I'm finding that balance where I'm just like, fine, I guess I won't play. But like that, yeah, like I've subscribed to that idea a lot, that you need other things, because like you can't train all day. Like I make it seem like I do. I train twice a day. Sometimes I used to train like 3 times a day.
Yep.
And even then, like there is downtime. Like the max you can do is maybe an hour or 2.
Yeah.
But then you're gonna have 4 or 5 hours where you're not doing anything till the next training session.
Yeah.
If you have nothing to do, you're just laying there, and it's like you could do kind of the Khabib thing of like going to sleep. But then like even he plays Dagestani basketball, so it's like you have to have something else. For me, I have basketball. Like I'll go play. I played a game yesterday. That's why I got the. Funny enough, I fought who knows how many times, done who knows how many jiu-jitsu events at this point. Like I think overall I've done like 60 something combative things in the last 3 years or so, 4 years, and I get face scars from basketball.
Yeah,
because 2 guys are going too hard, and I'm just like, you people are putting a ball through a hoop.
Yeah.
Relax. Why do I have a scar on my face? Why is my face bleeding from the 2 of you trying to get a rebound? Like, relax. And it's like that thing where it's like, I think men play sports to release male aggression. And there's just that like little competitive edge of like, and flexing and all these other things. So there's that thing where they just go a little bit too much, even though it's just a pickup game somewhere else. Yeah. But yeah, I play basketball. I know a bunch of the guys at Central, at Prince Alfred Park. I know a bunch of them. Like every time we've got this really cool group of people. Sometimes they buy some beer, they buy some ciders or stuff like that, and we're like drinking ciders and playing basketball. Like one time we went from like 10 o'clock in the daytime till 10 o'clock at night, and we only stopped because they turned the lights off.
Oh wow!
So it's like, and it was like super cool dudes, and then eventually someone just bought a case of ciders. We just started drinking and playing 5-on-5s, and it's like people from all walks of life. One guy's like a restaurant manager, is like overweight, but like, and rides a unicycle.
No way.
Like he's like 6'4" or something, big overweight dude, rides a unicycle in, and we call him Italiano. He just like rides his unicycle onto the court, and he just like, he can pass better than anyone. He always wants to play like full court 5-on-5, and we're just like, of all the people here who should be wanting to play full court 5-on-5, you are not it. But he does. He's like outlet passes.
He needs
running
it
all
because
the time.
if he's got a restaurant, he's probably eating all the good food that's in there.
Yeah.
So he's like, I need to work.
Plays this game, jumps on his unicycle, just like rides away. I'm like, that is a character and a half. There's like so many guys over there who I know, and guys and girls over there who I know. We play basketball there, and then me and my best friend, my friend Josh, we also play basketball every now and then as well. And basketball is fun, and then there's video games, and then there's creating stuff in 3D. There's all these little outlets where if any one of them, like you said, becomes draining. Like I've been doing the fighting thing for who knows how long. I'm in camp. It's really like, it's no longer creative and fun. It's like when you get into camp, that shitty part is the fact that like the fun and creative part goes away, because every time you get caught with a shot, even if it's a light one, you factor in the worst case scenario of a fight. So now all of a sudden, like, this becomes a job. When camp hits like 4 weeks out, for me, this has become like my second job. Yeah, it's like, it feels like I'm going to work. Yeah. So then my first job becomes the creative outlet again. Yeah. And it's like there's that blend between, and if the first job is also like stressful, then like the way I crossed over one of my friends in basketball becomes a creative outlet. Yeah. And if that's not there, it's like there's always a thing that I have there to like jump to, where I can flex out that other part of my brain and where I just relax. Where it's just like, this isn't a job, this is just fun. And I felt if I didn't have that, there's like that burnout would have kicked in a long, long time ago. Because there's a really talented guy who during COVID, his name's Bucky. Like I was playing basketball with my friend, and then I was like teaching him boxing, and he wanted to join us and spar us. And I'm like, random guy wants to spar us. When he sees us sparring, this might go south. Yeah. But like he was out there with his mom playing basketball. This is during the COVID lockdowns. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, sure, you can spar me first. So that way I can, like, worst case scenario, I can suss out whatever you're doing. And then he's like super controlled, like very sharp boxer. I'm like, okay, when have you trained? And then he spars my friend who's like a complete novice, but a complete novice who's going a little too swingy and hard, but like just controls him the entire time, walks him through stuff, doesn't batter him at any point, doesn't get caught. I'm like, you are really, really good. How old are you? He's like, he's 20. I'm like, fuck, what have you done anything before? He's like, he's a judo black belt, a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's done boxing in his own, there's a training for who knows how long at a gym. He's got all these martial arts. I'm like, are you going to do an MMA fight? He's like, yeah, maybe one, maybe. I don't really feel like it. And he hasn't still. And I'm like, what do you mean one? Like, you are the archetype of the person everyone's been afraid of forever. Like, that super talented black belt who's been training since he was 6, et cetera, et cetera. How come one is just like, just burned out of it? It's just, it's like, it's just not, for him, whatever that glory you could get from being the champion of the world in the UFC just doesn't, it's not an allure. It's like, this is just martial arts at the end of the day. Like, it became routine for him. You could like see it in his eye. It became routine for him a long, long time ago. Yeah. And like, to tell him to commit his whole heart and soul into this thing again is just like, commit someone to what? Like,
well, it's one of those things where it's like, if you knew the outcome, it's like almost like when a fight gets spoilt for you, or a big fight, and everybody wants to watch it, but then the outcome gets spoilt.
Yep.
It takes a little bit of the shine off it. Same thing with movies, right? If you know the outcome, then when you watch it, it's like, okay, well, it's not quite the same.
Yep.
Right. And I feel like especially when it comes to careers and work and motivation and things like that, it's like when you're not quite there, like some people might have this belief that, this is exactly how it's going to play out for me. But I feel like there's excitement in that, hey, it could go disastrously wrong as well, right? And that's part of the, you got to take those lows as well and actually enjoy them. Yep. Because like, I'm sure for anyone that's, been successful at something, there was always a point where they were like, doubting themselves. They had these thoughts, these negative emotions that might have been attached to, like, just like fight camp, right? Like when you go through a tough fight camp, you start to feel really down on yourself or whatever. Without those lowest of lows, you don't get to experience the highest of highs. So, my big thing is always, trying to advise people, just enjoy it, right? Like, it's the same thing with the podcast, right? Like, people will tell me I'm doing well and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And for me, like, I don't necessarily feel that way about it. But like, I just try and enjoy that. Hey, I'm pretty fortunate that I get to do something pretty cool and different, right? And, especially from where I was in high school, I never thought I'd be doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And then even like, I look at my friends and they're all in different industries and they all do different things or whatever. And, like one of the guys who I thought would be ultra successful, and part of the reason why I started this podcast, he ended up committing suicide. Right. And so, you don't know where life is going to lead you. And you get to, one of the beautiful things about life is that you get to connect with all these different people. No matter what vacation you do, you can build a community around martial arts, the people that you train with. You can build a community around the people that you go to school. You build a community around the people that you work with, play basketball with. Like, you meet all these different characters. And I think most of the conversations are only like surface level.
Yep.
Right? Where it's like, oh, hi, bye. What's your name? Oh, how long you been training for? Or, what are you interested? What do you do? Have you got family? Like, that's the sort of surface level shit.
Yeah. Water cooler talk for the most part.
Right? But then to actually like sit down and have a real conversation and try and understand somebody's mindset, most people don't even do that, with the people that are close to them.
Yep.
But I get to do it, like almost like a job, right? and I get to sort of like, try and pick people's brains about, what actually helps the way that they think and that kind of thing. So, I look at that from that particular point and I go, oh, that's actually a massive blessing, right? From a monetary side, no, it's shit house, right? Like it's, if I wanted money, I'd go back to the automotive industry.
Yeah.
And look, don't get me wrong. It's not that I hate the automotive industry. I actually really am passionate about the automotive industry. I love the people. And it's always been about the people for me. Like, I really love working with the people that, you meet in the automotive industry, because a lot of times, there are guys that come into like sales as an example. And these are guys that, probably didn't do that well at school, but they're great talkers, or, they have maybe a slightly more outgoing personality. Or sometimes you get these introverts that you're trying to coach into how do you go and deal with this rejection, and like how do you ask hard questions, and how do you actually formulate relationships with people. And when you actually start to understand there's some commonality here in that, if you want to form a real relationship with someone, you can't avoid the hard conversations. You actually have to go headfirst into these hard conversations, because that's where you're actually going to understand more of each other.
Yep.
All right. It's the same thing like, in sparring, right? I'm not saying you have to go ultra hard at somebody to know where they're at, but you have to like respect where they're at as well and go and meet the same energy.
Yes.
Right. And so, as an example, if somebody's going really hard, then, you got two options. You either meet that energy or you shy away.
Yep.
Generally I'll always have the conversation first. Okay, if you want to go hard, we can go hard. But, smart way is, look, let's play a bit and be a bit more technical about it, right? But like, when you meet that energy, that's where you actually garner a really great relationship with somebody.
Yes.
So I guess, thinking about that, like let's talk a little bit about the martial arts journey, and then I want to come back to the 3D art thing.
Yeah.
Right? So when did you first start getting involved in martial arts?
Like formally or just like myself? Because I have a very analytical mind. Like attention to detail really helped with the whole 3D art thing. Like, so like for instance, when I first started, I could always like kind of kick in a bunch of other stuff, but like I loved martial arts since I was a child. But actually training, I trained kind of on my own with like a heavy bag for like since I'd say 2013 when I finished high school till to around 2016. I joined here 2017, but that was like I when I hit the heavy bag, for instance, I'd look up like 40 things someone does wrong with their jab. And I'd watch the video and I'd film my videos and I'd make sure the attention to detail is there. And that idea of like the bag doesn't hit back, make sure you move with the bag. And I'd go 2 hours every single day. Like I'd wake up and I had a routine where as I'm about to go to the shower, like the other door's right there to the downstairs area where the bag was. So now it's on my way to the shower. So I can't ignore it without making an active choice to skip training. So it's like you take the steps there. And there's so many times where I'm like sore and tired from like just like going for that long, because I'd make sure I'd get to my burnout when it comes to like the thing I did at the end of my workout was to get to 1,000 strikes over the course of like, I think, whoever knows how many rounds. It was like a 2-minute interval or something like that. Get to 1,000 strikes. No, not even. There was no intervals. It was like lots of 20. Like 20, 20, 20, and I was counting them as ones until I got to 1,000. And that's like punches and kicks repeatedly over and over again every day. And I do that, but like there's times where I was like, I'm just so washed out that I get up and I'm like, I'm just gonna go shower now. And I walk into the kitchen and the area is here and the shower's here, and it's just like, fine, I guess I'll go. Fine, I guess I'll go outside then. And I go outside and I just trained and film it again and make sure I get it right repeatedly. Like there's some funny videos which I have of like me when I was overweight at the time as well. That's why I started training. I was like 100 and at my heaviest I was like 130.
Wow.
And then when I joined here, I think I was a 115, 125, somewhere around that range. But like, and that's because I'd stopped working out over the course of college and like went back to being fat, then worked out, then fat. So I was actually light when I came here in comparison to like beforehand. But I was like I was 115 when I joined here. I was 125 before I joined because I was like, maybe I should get in some kind of shape before I joined this martial arts gym. But I was, but I'm throwing like 720 hook kicks at like my weight. I have video of me doing it and like getting disappointed because I like missed the technique off, and I'm like looking at myself like I can't do that now, and I'm significantly more athletic and like fit and all that, and it's like the level of obsession and detail there was supposed to be there because I'm watching like a high level Taekwondo black belt like give the instruction on how he actually does everything to a T. So I'm like pausing my video and being like, I just didn't turn that leg just 45 degrees enough. That's why my spin was off. I'm not leaning in. I'm finding out all the tips and I'm repeating it over and over again every day. And then I'm factoring in like if this is a person, they're swinging, they're moving back, I'm too close, I'm too far, and practicing a whole pile of just sometimes some crazy stuff, but then it was mostly fundamental stuff. It was just like every day, even if I'm tired, it's like 100 jabs off the left side, 100 jabs off the right side, 100 crosses repeatedly, doubles and triples and quadruples, and over again until the technique is perfect. And I'm filming it and I'm knowing like I'm like kind of beating myself up in the video. It's just like, fuck, you dropped your hand when you threw that jab. You did this. And I did that till about 2017, and then I joined SBG because I was going to like college up the light rails down the road, but right up the light railway is Wentworthville, where my college was. So I could literally just like leave school and get here in time, which was a blessing because like I lived in Campbelltown. So if I was still like going to school in Campbelltown, there's no way I would have made the trip here, because once school ended, it was a 3-hour trip by like 4 trains to get here. But I'd already joined. So now once I've joined, I've made a community. I'm like, now I'm willing to take the trip. But so I joined here, and then I started training. I went into BJJ. BJJ I had no experience of. So I got relatively good at that one because I didn't come in with, because as much training as you can do on your own, you still pick up bad habits because there is no one there to like tell you like, hey, you're being overly analytical to yourself. Like, because you're being overly analytical, you're now standing still in the same spot, practicing the same jab, when really you should maybe have been working on this, or you're ignoring this bit, or also now you don't have an actual person to play off of. They might throw it at different cadence and different timing and all this stuff, and you've got it in your head that it's going to be like this. But so I joined here, got good at BJJ. My striking was good enough that Ben usually makes us do around 25 striking classes, foundation, no sparring, just pads, and like making sure your technique's right before you jump into the sparring classes to make sure no one's coming in and being overwhelmed and beaten up. So I was in within, I think, by the first grading, so about like maybe 10 sessions or so, because he's like, okay, you've already got the foundation stuff, you already have that down. What you're missing is like sparring and active stuff with people. So I jumped into the sparring, and I was sparring against a really good guy. He lives in Queensland now, but named Rob. And Rob had been training for a while, and like Ben kept coming up to me like, "Are you sure you haven't trained?" Because I think the assumption was like I was dojo stoning or something. Not dojo stoning, but kind of just like he's one of those guys who like lies about his experience, so you can just like fake people out. I don't know what the motivation was, but he's just like, he kept training like, "Are you sure you haven't trained? Are you sure you haven't trained?" And then I fell on a high kick, and you could just see the look in his face like, noob.
I laugh because whenever I go to the events, and then I'm like I'm talking to all the fighters and some of the teams that I don't know as well, and asking how long you train, and people always like, they look at their coach and then the coach is like, say 6 months. And I'm like, come on guys, like fuck 6 months and then you're here already. Okay, sure, all right, whatever you want me to say. Like,
I'm 18 years old, 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm a very small, tiny man.
Yeah. I was just like, come on guys,
Mike Tyson,
just give me something to work with, right? Like I've got to actually announce stuff and talk about it when I'm doing commentary. Just give me something to work with. Like, tell me a story, tell me something, And then some guys are always very cagey about their experience, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like whatever it is, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
it's funny.
I used to be like, just like, fuck it, just tell them everything you're doing. And then then people started avoiding me in fights, and I was like, I get it. I get why you hide it. I get why you say like, I've only fought once. It was a terrible fight. I got armbarred immediately. I have terrible defense. My neck is easily choked. It's just like people just start avoiding you now. But yeah, I trained a bunch. I trained here. We sparred. I did a lot of the sparring, and that was a really big wake up call, because I was like, I started late. I started like when I was 23, when I actually when I joined here and started training. And even when I was doing my own stuff, I was like 18. So like that was my only experience like hitting things. But I think that was like a blessing, because it's the kind of that thing that like some coaches do want, like boxing coaches I know for sure, where they'll make you skip and do everything else but hit shit till you reach a certain age, because like old school boxing coaches, because they want to teach you the fundamentals to begin with. So all I did for years was like just the fundamentals. So by the time I like jumped in, I had no head trauma whatsoever.
Yep.
I had no ego problem whatsoever, because I was a mature adult with a job at this point.
Yeah.
And it's like you're coming in, and then I got to assess what I was dealing with when it came to sparring, all that, like fully like assess it. There was no ego.
Yep.
If I got hit clean, I was like on myself, like, what did I do? Oh, my chin was up. I should fix that. I should fix this. I should fix that. At no point, even if the other person was going hard, you kind of end up putting that standard on yourself. Like, you're taught these techniques because they're meant to keep you safe. If you got caught clean, you did something wrong. Or he did something really good.
Yeah.
And it's one of those two things. And half the time, because I was a beginner, it's because I did something wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like I got to fix a lot of stuff to there. And again, not much head trauma, not much ego kicking in at all. I was an introvert and a nerd, so I didn't feel like I belonged around tough people anyway. So it's like it gave me a pretty good base on the fact that like the fact I could catch up to the thing you lose from the fact that I didn't start real early is they have like an innate muscle memory. Like we got two twins here who are like really, really good. Shout out to Khan and Adam. They've been playing like rugby since they were who knows how long. They've been in grand finals and who knows what. They're young. They're like 17-ish. But like they're gonna be really, really good because they're gonna get like the muscle memory side of things is gonna be just in. They just know. Whereas I have to retrain it and keep retraining it because I started so late that I have to do 3 to 4 times the work to train my body to remember that muscle memory and those twitches and that shifts. And that's, I think, what usually would do someone the detriment when they start late is they either, one, they start late, so they have a job, they have a wife, they have kids, they have stuff where they can't train that long, or they don't realize they're supposed to, which is like you are dealing with people who've been doing this since they were so young. For them, your flinch is your hands fly up to your face. Their flinch is a slight head tilt. And they need that head tilt because they're picturing slipping a shot. It's like you've got to train yourself so much more than they do so you can catch up to their level of like muscle memory, and then you can start training, and then so you can catch up to their level of like progression. And if you don't, you'll never catch up. You'll always you might be naturally talented at a bunch of different things, but you will get caught eventually by someone with the same natural talent, but they have a little bit of an extra twitch or something they have to you. So that's always been the way I've kind of worked out my training regimen. It's why I train as hard as I do. It's catch up, and then once I've caught up, to start excelling past other people, and that kind of Kobe Bryant mindset of just like, I'm going to outwork everyone until I outwork myself. I want to get to a point before a fight where I'm like, if I think of a doubt, like, like my next fight, this guy might beat me if he does this, that doubt would be gone because like, well, I've trained. I wouldn't even need to think about it. Like the thought would come up, like it happened to me in my fight against like Adonal Nareen 2 years ago at Urban Fight Night. Like the doubts creep in, like, yeah, what if he beats you? That'll be 2 losses in a row. You lost to Emil, you'll be done. And it's just like, you've done 3-a-days every single day. Just the thought of me like on my back, just like dying and trying to grab some air into my lungs was just like, this guy's not beating me.
Yeah.
No one's beating me right now. I'm not doing that for nothing.
Yeah.
Someone's going to get this work. I've worked hard enough that that's not going to be the case. I'm not going to slip on a banana peel and lose.
Yeah.
If I lose because I lose, it's fine.
Yeah.
But like that self-doubt of like, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. The work replaces that.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're as good as you think you are. You worked hard enough, and hard work will pay off regardless if you're doing it right. Hard work only doesn't pay off if you're like running every single day, but you never practice throwing a punch.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can work as hard as you want. You can run 16 hours a day, but you're
That's
trying to be a fighter, not a sprinter.
Exactly. Yeah. I think often an overlooked idea is that learning is actually a skill. So, to go back to your example of like, people who start really early, I always look at it from the long game. Like for me, personally, I did start martial arts very early. But I was fortunate to not have parents who were very aggressive at pushing me into it. For me, obviously, when I found the passion, I wanted to go. It was, everything that all I wanted to do was just train. But I feel like when parents have that expectation that they're really pushing you to do something, for kids they get burnt out, right? And for me, having seen so many different people come through and I've trained with so many different people over the years, and people who started and stopped, you start to realize, you put together a few patterns and you sort of realize, when one person starts, they bring a few friends with them, but then from that group of friends, only 1 or 2 might stay. The others might stay for a year or a couple of years or whatever, but over time they sort of just, fall off, whether it's like they gain other priorities in life or they weren't that passionate about it. But when it comes to, that what's the better way, having somebody who has that sort of muscle memory, has trained since they're young, but maybe taken a lot of damage as a result of it, depending on what sort of sparring they were doing and what the coaching was like and that sort of thing, versus somebody who, gets into it a bit later, but then applies their mind to it. There's a concept that I always like to talk about, which is like the steps to conscious competence. So when we talk about learning anything, the moment we go into that, it's no matter what it is. So let's say we'll use martial arts as an example, but the moment that somebody comes into a gym for the first time, they're basically unconsciously incompetent because they don't know what they don't know, right? And then once they start that process and they start turning up to the classes, they start to realize, holy shit, there's a lot of things that I don't know, right? So then they become consciously incompetent. I'm conscious that I'm shit at this, right? I'm consciously incompetent. And then what happens is that, you know, you keep training and then you start to develop some skill and then you actually start to find some success. And you go, oh, like things are starting to work for me. It's like people go, oh, like I felt like I've had all this progression lately, you know, and they feel like they've leveled up, so to speak. You know, people always use that term, oh, I leveled up. That's when you're actually finding some level of unconscious competence. It's like things are working, but you're not really 100% sure exactly why they're working, right? And then, you know, when you start getting to like those really high level levels, people enter this space of what we call conscious competence, where it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing. And I know if I pull on this arm, it's going to get this reaction and therefore I can now do this, right? So you start to see the layers. That's when we enter this phase of what we call conscious competence. Now, what happens with a lot of the guys who train when they're young is that they develop this high level of unconscious competence, but if they don't have the love for the sport or the love for the game, they don't operate with this in this level of conscious competence, right? Yeah. And anybody that gets good at anything, you might hit this level of conscious competence for a short period of time. And so why I say that is because what happens is that when you hit that level where you go, okay, I'm at this level where I can do shit and what I'm doing is now giving me this reaction. I know exactly what's going to happen. It's almost like I can see the future. We become consciously competent, but then we get complacent, right? Because you go, I've done this a million times. I know what works.
Yeah, because the passion is there and you're like, why would I want to do that? Like, unless you're actually, it's like those guys who fight.
Yep.
And they fight because they have to fight because they need to make money.
Yeah.
But like the moment they get any other revenue stream, they're like, I'm done with this fighting thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and it's like, why? You're really, really good. It's like, there's no passion there. Like, why would I want to learn how to knock this guy out faster?
Yep.
Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Yeah. It's like that thing you're saying. It is like applying it is one way you would need passion for you to start doing conscious competence.
You need to be operating in that. And a lot of people say that conscious competence is actually that flow state. You know, everybody talks about like getting into this flow state when it comes to work or whatever it is that you do, where it feels like, you know, time goes by really quickly, but you just, you know, everything's just sort of turning, the cogs are all turning in the right way. And it's just like, oh, I'm feeling really productive, right? But that, so what happens is, you know, we hit this conscious competence phase. And then what happens is because now we have some ideas in terms of what's happening every time that, you know, this progression occurs, then we can operate on unconscious competence. And humans, we're all lazy. You know, we go back into this unconscious competence phase where we go, okay, we know what works. Yeah. So we just work on what works. And there's a big problem with that is because, you know, when you start making assumptions and you go, okay, well, I assume that this works because, you know, every time I've done this is the reaction that I've gotten. Then you get somebody who, you know, offers you a different reaction or has come across from a different sport and you go, oh, fuck, what happened? Like, this is supposed to work, right?
And that's where I live. That's why I like forcing people into that point of like, or their routine, that unconscious consciousness where they're just like, he's throwing a left kick repeatedly. I know how to block this one. And then suddenly I just do something else. Like, where the fuck did that come from? Because like, when I play the game, like fighting, for me, it's psychological. Like it's fun manipulating people. Yeah. Like I'm a bit of a psychopath in that sense. It's just like it's really fun making people zig when they should zag. I'll if I'm sparring sometimes I'll just like slap in the air out of nowhere. Just be like, wake up, what are you doing? And they're like, or I'll just walk forward at someone. Like the sudden change of the game we're playing of like both of us with our hands up and like bobbing left and right and parrying and faking. That sudden change to just suddenly walk at someone always sort of throws someone off. And I love that throw off because it's like, once I start discovering ways between that, I'm like, okay, cool. If I throw you off in that moment, I have this kick on that side. I have this move on that side. And once you're thrown out of it and you're out of that flow state for a split second and you're wondering like, well, usually it works. Why is he moving so funny? Why are you like, he's just walking around me, like fight. You start seeing fighters and people you're training with start to try and like mentally yell at you. Like, why aren't you playing the game? We're playing chess. Play fucking chess. Why did you put checkers pieces here? And it's like, I'm playing whatever I want, man. It's all good, man. It's
the freedom.
Everything's free. We can do whatever we want in this game. It's like, no, I want to play chess.
So you know, from that perspective, right? Like, I guess speaking to Ben, you know, one of your coaches, like, can we talk about, you know, the influence he's had on you in terms of like, yeah. So I guess, you know, when you started here and so you've gone through that process where after 10 sessions or so, you managed to get yourself into the sparring classes. And, you know, Ben's a funny guy because, like, you know, even before we were just training and Ben's like, oh yeah, Johnny's fought before, you know, if you can try and knock him out. So he's got, you know, something to talk about and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, thanks, Ben. Just put the target on my head.
Yeah. It's funny because that joke works solely because like we've had maybe, I think 2 knockouts in this gym the entire time I've been here since 2005. So like everyone goes hella soft and light. There's like 2 people fighting, maybe 3. But even Akram is fighting, and you went with him, and it's like, even he's very controlled. So it's just like that joke of like, hey guys, do that thing you never do. Just because Johnny's here.
Yeah.
And it's like knowing like, neither of you would, even if you wanted to. You're just like, it's not the culture that was been built. And like, that's why I love this gym. It's like, he built a culture where at the time when I was joining a gym, I'm an introvert and also just don't want to deal with too much BS. So there was like, I was looking at other gyms and there was things where it's like, well, if you train here, you must buy our equipment and you cannot train without it and you can't go outside and compete on your own. It's like, and you must bow in this particular way. I'm like, I want to learn how to defend myself and pursue this martial art. I don't need the rig. Like, I will do it. Like, I bow when I come into the gym. I bow before I step on the mat because I want to. Because I'm like, oh, this is the respect that has been earned by this place. And that is a way that has been shown to show respect in a martial arts gym. Because I want to do that. And if the way was to throw a gang sign, I throw a gang sign. Because I want to do that.
Walk into the
mat. not because the sensei was like, where's the fucking gang sign? You didn't throw your gang sign when you walked on. I'm like, don't tell me what to do. We're here to learn how to punch and kick each other. Like, I like bringing stuff down to the baseline, like a small tangent. Like when I play basketball, when I was playing basketball yesterday, for instance, these 2 guys were going a little bit too hard. One of them was good, and that's where one of them like went for a rebound, like swiped down real hard and like smacked me in the face, and like it was bleeding and everything. The 2 of them were kind of jarring at each other, and I'm like, whatever. And then they stopped and I separated them. We're playing, and I'm just like, I blocked this guy's shot once, and then I stopped him a few times, but not much of anything. I wasn't really the main scorer on the team. It was mainly these 2 like kind of going at each other and like scoring all the time. But I'm like, they're a distraction. I'm like, haha, I'm just like Rudy Gobert. I'm not that effective. And it's just like, how many points have you scored? And he said it aggressive. I'm like, in my head, my brain went straight into like, because I usually am not one of those guys who gets like red and hype, like, what the fuck you say about me, bro? My brain was like, bro, you're putting a ball through a hole. Like, you're being aggressive to me and you're putting a ball through a hole. And then the other guy recognized it and he's just like, yo, you like, he'd fuck up everyone on this court. Like, don't do that. I get it. This is your way of releasing your male aggression, but we're putting a ball through a hole. He fucks people up for fun. Like, there's a difference here. You're tall. It doesn't matter. He'll break you in half. And like in the moment, I'm just like, I let that go because like I'm not that type of person. Like, pokes and pushes people because they're being dicks. I'm like, whatever anger issues you have, they're not going to be my anger issues as well.
That's right.
So I'm just like, yeah, it's called a fucking joke. I'm bringing levity to the situation because you 2 are fucking going way too hard for no reason. Yeah. And then he's just like, and I'm like, yeah, but my face is the one bleeding between the 2 of you having your little arguments about your little fouls. And he's like, oh, wait, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's whatever. Yeah. But in that moment, he realized all his little complaints about shit didn't work because my face is bleeding and I haven't said a thing for the last fucking 5 minutes. The other guy smacked your arm a few times and you're like, you're going too hard and you're trying to fight. Yeah. But, I forgot the point I was
We're talking about Ben and how it's influenced you, yeah.
So when I was joining a gym, I didn't want to join a gym where that was the energy. Where you get to the gym, it's like some dudes have had a shitty day at work and it's their chance to let it fly. You know, it's like we're going here to spar and we're going hard and and that's the culture. It's just like you're not trying to learn. Because especially at the time when I joined, the idea of competing was gone. I'm like, this is a thing that people do. If you're going to compete, you do it because you started training at like 18. Because that was the kind of idea. Because my extended family, my family and all that came from like soccer and other sports where you do start hella young. Yeah. So it's like the idea was this ship sailed a long time ago because you didn't pursue it. So whatever. So I'm not thinking of competing at all. I'm thinking of I want to learn a martial art and master one and just get good at one on my own self, for my own self, and I'll never compete or whatever it is. But I don't want to go to a gym where there's a bunch of people like treating every single day, every single drill like it's the world championships, and they're going too hard for no reason besides ego. So when I joined here, it was like, I think I call it like kind of middle classy in the sense that it's like everyone has a job. They got to go home to their family. No one wants to go home with a headache or no one here had an ego at all. But like, but the jiu-jitsu was wild because it was like, oh, this is the one where we can exert ourselves and not hurt each other.
Yeah.
So like
Provided somebody taps.
Oh yeah. It was like the striking was controlled and we went our rounds. If someone was going hard for a sparring match, they were going hard. It was good. It was all very much controlled. I just love the environment here. It's just like, everyone's chill for the most part, and we're here to do our job, and we train. And Ben's kind of that quartermaster of it all. Like, he knows when it's like, everybody gets serious because we need to do this for this thing. And fine, let's play around, and he'll make the joke, and everyone's kind of like working on different things. Like when I'm not in a camp for a fight and I'm doing sort of creative shit and I have my hands down, Ben will be like, yeah, you're in that creative phase again. Yeah, keep doing that. Like figure it out, but also rein it in a little bit. You're doing a bit too much creative shit. And it's like, okay, cool. And he'll like even give me advice. It's like, oh yeah, that combination you just worked, land that knee. Yeah, do that. Do it. Maybe if you do it this way. And like, there's that encouragement to play and all that other stuff. And he does it with everyone else and watching. And everyone kind of gets that vibe and everyone kind of falls in line because like everyone's falling from the old guard and all that stuff. We're all like, oh, if they're doing it, then I'm going to have to learn to spar technically, spar like this and spar in a nice way and all this other stuff. And, the environment is like everyone's cool for the most part. Everyone, we haven't had anyone who is very, I'd say the word douchey. It's like everyone comes in and has an ego because they know at any point everyone's gonna get beat. Like you're gonna lose them. You're gonna lose a round. You're gonna have to play because I love the contrast in sparring with here and sparring at MMAFT for that reason. It's like in MMAFT you're playing but you're not playing. You're sparring. You're taking the person for what they are and you're executing your things and you can be creative within yourself.
Yeah.
Here, because we're both agreeing we're playing and we're playing pretty hard, like you can't ego your way into a shot. You have to set it up properly.
Yeah.
And if you don't set it up properly, you might get caught. You might not get caught. And the beginners at first kind of like will fall. They'll get caught with a bunch of different shots, and they won't get hurt. But like they'll need to find the flow first and realize like you need to find whatever your thing is for your body type. Find a flow within it and make it work. So you get a bunch of guys who are very unique in their own self. Mateo's very like he's got a bit of head movement, but he's like strong in his strikes and like they're very technical and straightforward at you. Akram's up high. He's got that boom, faint level change. He's got his own different style. He's a bit of a bully when it comes to his work. I've got that flowy, like moving around people. Everyone figures out their thing and you figure out how to make it work.
Yep.
And like, cause you are still playing hard. So it's not like we're making up moves and stuff like that. If your thing doesn't work, you're going to get caught.
You're going to know.
Yeah, you're going to get caught pretty quickly and you're going to get shown repeatedly because the other guy's like, oh, I'm looking for any opening you can give me to touch your face and I'm going to touch it repeatedly. Oh, good. Thank you. Keep doing that mistake repeatedly and I'm not going to let up. If you can't defend a low kick, I'm going to kick your leg the entire round and I'm not going to stop and no one's going to stop me from doing so. And like, that's the kind of game where it's like, you'll feel your leg get touched and like, fuck, okay, damn. As opposed to like me blasting your leg off because I'm like, if I don't blast your leg off, you're going to throw a left, right as hard as you can at my face. Yeah. Or like you're throwing at a high enough clip that my shots all have to be like for purpose.
Yeah. You got to get the respect back.
Yes.
It's not even just the respect. It's just certain shots at higher intensity.
Yeah.
You know, will shift somebody off balance and then that counter's not a thing anymore.
Yep.
Right. And so that's why it's like, you know, there's merits to both ways, but you need to have that balance of both ways.
Yes.
You can't always spar hard and you can't always spar light. You need to have that balance so that you can find out, you know, okay, when we're sparring light, I can try and do more technical things and see, you know, how I can fit these shots in as counters and blah, 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 blah. But when you're going hard, you might realize, oh, that counter doesn't actually work because if I'm trying to counter like a body kick, but the body kick shifts me off stance, I can't throw. But if I can do it when we're going light, it's giving you a false sense of security. So you need to be able to have that pressure testing to go and say, okay, if somebody's really sending that left body kick into me, you know, I can't just passively try and throw out my right cross as a counter. I need to actually be quite aggressive with it. I need to actually hold my position to actually reach the distance to actually use it as a counter.
Yep.
So then for you, how did like if the competition idea wasn't really the thing for you when you started, like how did you get roped into it?
One of my coaches, Dan, was just like, "You're big. You should compete." I'm just like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you should do jiu-jitsu." I'm like, "Okay, fine." And then I was gonna do it, and then I did a jiu-jitsu comp, and Ben was like, "You could do a MTA day, a kickboxing development day," and I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like, I was thinking that was gonna be the extent of it. Like, everything I was gonna redo was either gonna be like a jiu-jitsu tournament every now and then, and a really padded up kickboxing match and really the kickboxing match was meant to be like just one or two, just for the sake of like, I saw other guys at the gym when we started doing them like level up their game, and I'm like, I've reached a point where I didn't even realize it myself, but I'd reached a point where I'm like, I'm now sparring flowingly, but I'm only sparring. I'm like here because I know you. I know what you'll do. You're not trying to kill me and take my head off. And so I'm trying all this stuff. And when I fought my MTA day, I fought twice in one day. The first time I got a pretty quick knockout while I was doing all the kind of, and then the second time around I met a like way more durable guy. And he's like, I'm like, oh, maybe if I just hit him with everything, the referee will pull me off and I can catch my breath. And as I'm going through like this 16 hit combination where I'm like throwing jabs and crosses to the head, inside low kick, outside, midway through a combo, because I'm like, I'm going to hit everything, not just the head. I'm going to go to the head, then the body, and all these things, because that's the way to do it, is like, don't just attack the one thing, which is kind of the right thing, but just don't do it in a massive flurry.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing it, I'm like 1, 2, and I'll throw my hand outwards over here. He instinctively shifts his weight this side. I catch him with another shot. And then I'm like, okay, it's all good. The referee's going to stop. And he just looks at me. He's like, oh, you're tired. I'm like, no. I keep throwing. And then I like try like shuffle stepping back. And he already recognizes like, yeah, whatever he had rope-a-doped me. Yeah. He's like, good. And just starts walking me down with cross after cross. Fight ends up going for 3 rounds because I'm like gassed as hell. I'm trying to pull out any technique I can get. And Ben at the end of the first round is just like, this is what he's like. It's like a Rocky moment. It's just me in his head. He's just like, this is what you want. This is what you need, isn't it? This is the challenge you're supposed to be having. And I'm just like, yeah, I guess it is. Like, because that idea of like in my head, I was a bit too full of myself at that point. I'd reached a point where I'm just like, I've watched all the tape. I'm too analytical. I've watched all the tape. I know every counter to a counter. I know every entry to an entry. I know how to have my hands down in front of a dangerous opponent and still know how to land it. And then, like, in that fight, I did all of it, hit the guy a lot of times, and just some people's chins are way harder than that. And in that case, well, I had 16-ounce gloves. He had headgear. I had headgear. We had body pillows. Like, it was not conducive to being able to throw hard.
Knockout, yeah.
And it's just like, well, now you have to solve the problem now. What happens when you meet that immovable object? You got all your fancy little entries to land your little fancy uppercut, but the guy hasn't moved. What are you going to do about it? Now he's coming at you and you're a little tired. And it's like, shit, it like really, that was like one of the best fights for me ever. I lost it in the end by like a close decision, but I was like, that was best because all the fat from my game went out. It was like, oh, you got to do the stuff that works, still keep the creative stuff, pick the stuff that worked from there, but also like, take your little ego out of it. You started getting a little one because you're like, fuck, I'm sparring really good with guys who've been training, so who knows how long. I've only been training for like a year. Yeah. And it's like, you get your ego back out like, no, you're still shit. Like, don't get it twisted. You might know what they do, but you don't know what someone else will do, so get better. And like my game went really high from there. I did another one later on, and before that, I'm just like, damn, I wish I think I'd done a jiu-jitsu comp and I'd won the gold. And Ben was just like, I'd come back to the gym on Saturday and I was like, fuck, I wish I'd like just jumped into the stuff way early. I would have like probably won fought. And he's just like, we're sitting down and he's like, yeah, you could have, you can have a good 10-year career. It's like, because he trained with Anthony Parash. And so I was like, you can get 10 years out of this. Like if you start now and you go for it, you can actually follow through and like get there. And I was like, that's all. It was the same with the career advisor. That's all I needed to hear was someone tell me it's possible and I can do it. And I was like, okay, that's all I need. I'll put my head down and I'll work harder than anyone else will ever work ever. And once I started doing that, I did like, I think I got up to like 50 jiu-jitsu matches in a year. I did like maybe 12, 13 comps the very next year in 2008. 19, I think. I did a shit ton of those comps, culminating in like also 3 kickboxing matches, all wins against guys who were at heavyweight. I started losing the weight a fair bit. I was going from my first one, I was 100. The guy was 125. My second one, the guy was 110. I was like 95. The third one, I was 90. The guy was like 98. And my striking was just sharper on all of them to the point that by the third fight, I had my arm down and I was just like leaning him into southpaw crosses repeatedly because I had this hand down and it was baiting him to come this way. So when I throw that cross, the head just comes off center line, and like I was just doing whatever I wanted, playing the game there. But I still had things to work on. Where Ben's just like, you're thinking too much in there. You're in there like seeing the guy and trying to assess what to land, and while you're assessing what to land, he's doing shit. And that I only just got out of my game like the last fight, where it's like not the fight where I just won by knockout, but the one before that, where I was like, okay, I'm starting to work a lot more. I'm starting to not think as much and just trust the camp and everything that we did. But yeah, once he put that battery in my back, I was like, okay, I got this. If I'm going to do that, okay, what do I need? And you didn't even have to tell me, go jump into a shit ton of jiu-jitsu comp. I was like, okay, if I want to be a good MMA fighter, what's the one thing that usually ends up like someone's got a good striking, then they get taken down, they get just molested. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm doing a shit ton of jiu-jitsu comps because I can do a lot of those without getting hurt. And gain that adrenaline and competition control. And then also I'm dealing with like wrestling really big guys because I didn't compete at lightweight at all. Like I was 90 kilos, still signing up for the 230 pound, which I think is like 100 and something, who knows, every time. Because I'm like, if I can't beat the biggest guy in jiu-jitsu, who cares? Like we're not that big of a difference. We are like, it's a 40 kilo difference, but we're heavyweights at that point. Like, it is what it is. So I was competing at heavyweight, and I was competing at like the lightest I fought was like I think the 90 kilo like one time or twice, but like I was competing at the biggest weight because I'm like, fucking, why not? And I always sign up for any comp. I'd sign up for the absolute and the thing, even if the absolute was like going up against black belts. Whenever I did grappling industries, it was hilarious because like the black belts are early in the morning because they have classes to teach. So I'd show up at like 9 in the morning, get tapped in 40 seconds, come back to class on Saturday, and Ben's just like, shouldn't you be able to come? I'm like, lost, roll a whole bunch, and then go back at 4 o'clock to do my division and just win. Because it's just like, oh, this is easy in comparison to the morning. And then also I've already just rolled, and they're like, why are you rolling? Aren't you competing? I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm not competing for the medal. I don't care. The goal is an MMA fight and to do MMA. So no matter what the comp was, I was chasing a submission. So like in all my matches, I think I have something like 40 matches. I don't know how many wins, something around 30 or 35 wins. They're all by sub and only 2 by walkover. And some of them I was winning by points by a lot. I'm like, I don't care about the points. I'm practicing for MMA. MMA, you hunt submissions and you hunt sweeps and you get the fuck up. Like I'm not trying to do jiu-jitsu here. I'm in Onogi trying to practice an MMA fight on you guys who don't realize I'm practicing an MMA fight. So I want to do as many matches as possible and then still have that edge to like want to win, obviously. So I did that. I did a whole bunch of them. By the time I got to my first MMA fight, it was Ben's like, well, there's this, I think it was super fight. He's like, yeah, I was a super fight. Do you want to fight in November? I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. Because at that point, I was just saying, yeah, sure to everything. You want to do a kickboxing match? Yeah, I'll do one. I'll do this. It was a second nature. By the time I got to the first match, I had like fucked up my ankle from a jiu-jitsu match like 2 weeks beforehand.
Oh, no.
A dude went from like he went for like an ankle lock, but it was weird because the foot was just out, and I just heard it snap 3 times. Because he just grabbed it and yanked quickly, and he just went snap, snap, snap. And then I got up, and I had won the first 4 matches with like 5 dudes at blue belt just all going for ankle locks. So they got the ankle lock. I'm looking at them like, the last 2 dudes, this didn't work. And I like slowly separate their grip, and I stand up. I'm like, it didn't work for them. It's not going to work for you either. And then by the time I got to the finals match, it was the other dude, and I could see him about to drop down for an ankle lock because I'm in guard. I'm like, okay, dude, this isn't going to work. It didn't work for those guys. But the way he had like grabbed it, I think he was right on the Achilles or something. When he dropped, my ankle was in like a weird position. It's like almost like a heel hooky position, but without the knee.
Lock.
And he just went snap, snap, snap at the moment his back hit, and I was like, shit.
And
then I get up. I'm like, okay, this is fucked up. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And then I go to the medic, which was the dumb thing to do because I thought the medic would know what they were talking about. Because I had won, I had to re-loop again and go up against him again for the finals because now I was in the semifinals.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, so my ankle snapped like 3 times. Can I compete again? And she's just like, sure, if you want to. And I'm like, okay, I guess she said it's fine. And I went back to compete, and then he almost snapped my other ankle.
Oh, no.
And right as he's like pulling it, I'm just like, no. He lands to his back. He like just relieved the pressure, but it was still sharp and painful. I was like, okay, good. I just survived. It fucking blew up and swelled up. I couldn't kick at all for the entirety of the camp. But by the time the match happened, I was like, my jiu-jitsu was just so much at such a point. I was like, he's a what? He's a white belt? Oh, I don't care. He's like, he had 2 fights, 2 MMA fights and all that, and he's probably he had competed a bunch. I'm like, I don't care. Like, at that point, I had an ego in me. Like, if you're a white belt, you're not fucking playing on the ground with me at all. If I grab a hold of you, we're gonna play. And that's what happened. He shot a takedown. Within an instant, I had an armbar on him. I had a second one, but because I'm like used to jiu-jitsu, I went hyperextend and stop. Like, oh yeah, now tap. And he struggled a little bit. I'm like, you'll struggle a little bit, but then you realize it's futile and you'll tap. I didn't realize in MMA, it's like the adrenaline's so high, you just fucking start wrenching and writhing repeatedly. Yeah. And then he slid out of it. I got like a shoulder lock on. That was like the weirdest shoulder lock there. And then eventually went for a sweep. We got up again and we went to some striking. Second round, he throws a kick, I throw a kick. He goes down. I go for a DOS choke. I have it on tight. I'm like, I've got my position in and everything. I'm sitting down on it. And I'm like, yeah, you got you. And he's about to tap. And his coach is like, pick him up. I'm like, bro, I weigh as much as you do, and this is a catch weight fight. I'm 96 right now. You're not picking me up from your neck. I'm like here, like this, locked in God in a DOS choke. I'm like, and he just saw, I feel my back lifting off the floor. I'm like, what's going on right now?
Yeah, wow.
He picks me up, yelling in my armpit, like, "Arr!" and just slams, and the choke just separates. I'm like, fuck, goddamn. And then he puts his hand on my face. I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. I spin for the arm bar, and this time I'm like, oh, it's your fault. I'm breaking your arm. Yeah. Tap on the way there. It starts breaking as I'm already there. He doesn't tap. As his back is hitting the floor, he's still not tapping. And the referee looks at it and his arm's like bent in the opposite way. Then he's just like, no, stop. And as the referee's going, he's tapping and he's like, oh yeah, stop it. And I'm just like, please tap earlier, people. Yeah. Especially in amateur fights. That's a PSA for me. You have work tomorrow. Yeah. Like, it's just an amateur fight. We're not getting paid. Yep. This is not... I would tap immediately to any joint lock that feels even remotely funny in an amateur fight. I don't care about what the stakes are. It's not worth it. But after that, I was just like, okay, so...
What's next?
I was, before COVID, I was planning 6 fights that year because that was the plan. Yep. And usually when I say it out loud, I have to follow it through for my own self. Yep. I'm like, I'm going to do this. It's like, cool. You know the work you have to do for it. You know the steps. Like, get on it. You have to hold yourself accountable. It's not even hold yourself accountable. It's like, you said you're doing a thing. Go do it.
How did your parents respond when you did the first fight?
Oh, I bully them because I'm like, you people yelled at me about kicking the heavy bag repeatedly, talking, you're breaking my house, so you don't get to come watch my fights. You wanted nothing to do with it then, you get nothing to do with it now.
How funny.
Yeah, eventually they'll be able to come to a fight or something like that. If I get a pro fight somewhere around Sydney, I might invite them through, but for the most part, I think I'd invite my dad because my dad was like, my mom doesn't care. She still calls it boxing. Yeah. She's just like, you're still doing that boxing. I'm like, it's MMA. She's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah. She's a nurse, so she definitely doesn't care. She's like, you're breaking your body. Oh, good, fun, great. Yeah, that's what I want you to do.
It grows back stronger. That's the thing that they,
she's seen enough bodies broken that not happen. That she's like,
that didn't go back stronger.
It's like, it sometimes also just gets worse,
Yeah, true. With age. Mm-hmm. All right, let's switch gears a bit. I want to talk about the 3D art thing. Yeah, so when you decided to go to college to do this 3D art thing, I guess you mentioned that you were a bit of a shut-in at that point in time, and you were just inside the house and doing stuff online, blah, blah, blah. I guess, what was the course like? And then was that something that you always wanted to do, or you just sort of was like, oh, this looks cool, I'll just do this?
Yeah, the moment the career advisor said, because it was originally game art, like video game art, and the moment he said it was there, I was like, okay, I should probably look into this, because if he's bringing it up as an option, there's probably a reason why. He's not Like, yeah, you wouldn't just like bring up, hey, you could be the president of the United States to a random kid who's finished high school.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I'll look it up. And I looked up I watched a few tutorials, and then I started like following through and making some of them. I was like, oh, this is actually really fun. This is kind of like the interface is like learning the controls of a video game.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, then other than that comes your creative outlet on it. It's like, okay, I can do this. I can figure it out. And then, oh yeah, this is how I actually end up in that course. So I'm like still trying to like finesse my gap year by being like, I went to see the career advisor. I'm practicing the stuff on my own. I'll sign up for a course eventually, Dad. And he's just like, and he found a course on his own. Like there was one on the way home, and it was at a defunct school called Devoka. And he's just like walked in there and he's like, oh yeah, you do what? Your 3D art? Okay. Cause he was in there with the career advisors also. And like, I've been talking about the 3D art. Like, yeah, I think I'll be doing this. And I'm like, in my head, I'm telling him like, yeah, I'm going to do this. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to factory work. What are you talking about? I just need something to distract you so you leave me alone for a year. And he just like wakes me up. I had terrible sleeping habit at the time. I went to sleep at like 7:00 in the morning. Like the light had come out and stuff. And he like grabs me at like 9:00. Like, we're going to sign up for this school. I'm like, we're doing what? It's like, there's a 3D school. They'll give you a free laptop if you sign up. You're going down. I'm just like,
free laptop.
I'm like, what? My eyes are like twitching and shit. I'm like half asleep. No, I'm fully asleep on the way to the thing. As the guy's talking about it, I couldn't even write my name. This is not legal in any way, shape, or form now that I think about it in hindsight. It's probably why the whole fucking college got defunct for the most part. They were like offering free shit. The amount of those laptops and stuff that people got after their 2 weeks in that ended up right across the roads at the secondhand store was on the news like it was that bad.
What? Really?
Yeah, because like, yeah, people would get like these laptops. They'd sign up for the course, do the vet fee thing, but like they know they're never going to pay the fucking thing anyway. They're never going to pay those bills anyway, but they get like a really expensive, like the laptop I got was an Alienware at the time, was like a $6,000 laptop with $12,000 software.
No way.
So like they got it after 2 weeks of signing up for a course. They get some mystery debt they're never going to pay off, but then they just walked across the road and sold it. So it's basically they signed up for free and got paid $2,000 for like showing up to a place for 2 weeks. Like easy. Like, and they don't even have to do anything when they show up to the place for 2 weeks. They just have to like say, and sometimes sometimes they didn't even need to, I didn't need to show up to anywhere because it was an online course. So they signed up for the online course and they just kind of like showed up. You don't have to hand in anything.
Yeah.
Just finish the 2 weeks and they send you your laptop and then they just sell it.
Yeah.
So a bunch of them got sold, but like when I'm there, I'm like, oh, you get a free laptop, we're doing 3D. And then it's like, yeah, just sign your name here. I'm like signing it and I forget how to spell my own name. It's that bad. I'm like that sleep deprived. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, I just need to do this so he gets off my back and leaves me the fuck alone. And like not realizing like I'm signing up for a whole course, but it did intrigue me when he brought it up. Like, oh yeah, this is the course. This is what you're going to do. You're going to make a game by the end of the year.
Yep.
And I was like, that little spark is the only thing that that I remember being awake, being like, oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. And then I signed up for the course. I woke up the end of the day when I actually finally got home and got to sleep. I woke up and realized like what I had done. And I was like, shh, I'm in school again. Damn it. What the hell happened? I thought I had a plan.
You got tricked.
Yeah. I was 2 months in, damn it. I was so close. All I needed was another 10 months and I could have had my gap year. I was like, okay, I guess I'll look up what this course direction is. And it was starting in a week later. So I was like, fine, at least I get a week to do whatever I want. And now he really is off my back. I can do whatever. Little did I know, he's like found a passion project. He's going to renovate the kitchen. And guess who's at home in the entire time?
Yeah.
But like I get there and this course starts and I start working on it and I'm seeing, I'm like, oh, this is actually really cool. I'm making the art that's made in video games. Like the thing I've been playing for who knows how long. I thought I had no way of ever accessing this profession. And then I did, and it was like the courseware was really good. The course itself was terrible. Like some of the tutors were good, but like there was so much changeover. At some point we had one tutor ended up taking over the entirety of Melbourne's entire student and Queensland students and Sydney students, and he was doing all of it for one person.
Wow.
And it was just like, it wasn't that good. The course was supposed to be 1 year, but they realized it's ridiculous to get people who like know nothing to then build a full game by the end of the year. And like I was smart enough to like be building stuff for the game for my first assessment.
Yep.
People like didn't build anything and then tried building the game from scratch at the end there, which is it just couldn't be done, and they'd have to like keep extending the course or like just drop out. It still ended up having to take 3 years, and they ended up having to push the course themselves and like change the base rate to like, okay, fine, this is a course that takes 3 years now, because they're like, it's ridiculous to ask people to build all the things, because the things they were asking to build, especially now that I have experience working and I have actually done 3D art for a fair bit. The things they were asking for were ridiculous. They were asking for environment art where they wanted whole worlds being built in Unreal Engine 3, which wasn't intuitive as much at all if you're a complete beginner. They were asking for like character buildings and a bunch of different things where it's just like the level of detail you need for this either needs to be completely minuscule, and that's not what you're teaching, or extremely big, and that is what you're teaching, but that you're not giving us the time to do that.
Yep.
And then also we're not doing it in teams. We're doing it by ourselves. So it's like online, at home, like with no tutors. Like this is because I was like self-sufficient. I'm looking up the YouTube videos. I'm figuring out how to do it. I'm watching the tutorials, and then I'm figuring out how to put my own creative spin onto like fixing it while having that sort of same thing I do with MMA. Is like I'm doing the jiu-jitsu comps because I know the end goal is
this.
Yeah. So the end goal is to make a game. So I'm like factoring in all those things. Just for by the time I got to the last assessment to make a game, they're just like, make it an Unreal Engine 4, not 3. I'm like, does my stuff transfer? Like, no. So like
start again.
That entire 4 months I spent building a world for this game for the environment assessment. Like, yeah, that doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm like,
shit.
Good, fun, great. That's fun. I spent sleepless nights building that environment. I could have made a tiny little chunk thing for you in 2 weeks and been done with it. Ugh, you fucking people. But that was good solely because it got me a level of experience in it and a level of comfortability. And just the fact that it did take 3 years let me sort out my shit like on my own self, like the whole culture shock thing, because now I had 3 years to work on it. And then I signed up for a different course at a way better school called AIE, I think Academy of Interactive Entertainment.
Okay.
It was a 2-year course. I signed on midway through the year, so I had to do an intensive, which means we're going to school every single day because you're trying to pack 6 months worth of a year's worth of school in 6 months. So I did that, and that was really good. We worked in teams. We built a different bunch of things. The courseware was a lot fun, and that was like the first course I did was game design. So I learned how to be a game designer. And then the second one I focused in on just game art because I was like, programming sucks. It's great. Programming is amazing, but any programmers out there, I think Fart would know this for a fact, is like you fix things and then they break on their own, but then they fix themselves on their own and you don't know why they fixed now. Like you'll fix a line here won't work for some reason and you'll try fixing it. It'll take forever to fix it and you won't be able to fix it and you'll say, fuck it, I'll just go fix this line. And then somehow that line starts working.
Yeah.
And there is no reason they're not connected, by the way. There's no reason that should work because this is working. It just is. And at some point you just throw your hands up like, yeah, good. I did good. And you run away from it.
Move along.
Yeah. You just run away as fast as you can. Like you just hope it doesn't dovetail more bugs later on.
Yeah.
But after a while, yeah, I dropped out of design. I did game art instead and focused on just being an artist because one, it was easy, and two, it was, like I said, I want to create shit, and I might want to create games, but a game designer kind of runs the whole team. It's a lot more paperwork than it is actually the
doing
creative
design.
side I want. Yeah.
So I want to digress, and I do want to come back to the 3D art thing, but when you said, with what did you do to try and work through the things, like not having really taken the time to reflect and adjust to the culture shock? Like what were you first of all, like how did you realize that you still had some lingering issues from this, and then secondly, were you Googling YouTube videos or listening to podcasts? Like how did you approach it, and how do you know that you sort of resolved it?
It really was like I lurked a lot on the internet because the culture shock wasn't like the culture of going to Australia. It was going to the Western world at all. Like the way people behave and talk to each other in Zimbabwe at least at the time when I was there, was so different to the way that everyone was talking and treating to each other. Like, even if you just use like one of the most obvious examples, but just like the way people treat each other when it comes to like their religions and their race. Like, you just don't talk about your religion, like, and you move on. It's yours. Go do whatever you want. Like, you are whoever. You're Johnny. Hey, cool. How's it going? You drink? Yeah. You're not. I'm a vegan. Why are you eating meat in front of me? It's like there's nothing there. It's like, if you eat vegetables only, you just order your vegetables and you eat your fucking vegetables. You don't need to tell me about your moral outcry.
Yeah.
But like here, there's like the way people interact with each other is like, I interact with you based off of like the things that you reflect on my values, and that is how I will interact with you. And that was like a weird way of speaking. But like, then everyone else they're all in sync and connected because like they've been doing it for so long, which is why there's that through line where you can come from like a Japan and go to America and you'll get a culture shock, but there's still through lines. There's through lines of like, oh, we're still a bit of like a Western civilization doing, we can flow through certain, we just speak a different language, or we have a different thing going from here to here. But at the time, or at least for me, mainly because I think that the way I was very much like 90s, sort of like out there with friends out there, we're playing with dumb stuff. Like, we'd put a piece of mud on an end of a stick and like flick it at each other really, really hard. And you could kill a bird doing that, but like, there's technique to it. But it was fun. And we'd make bows and arrows and actually fire like wooden arrows at each other. Not like proper wooden arrows, but like really shitty bows and arrows. We'd fire them at each other and a bunch of different things. But like, that was my upbringing, and now I'm here where it's like you're in these clothes and you're doing these things, and everyone's talking about the latest movie that they came out, what shoes they bought, what things, and it's like, yeah, I bought shoes also, I wore clothes also back there, but like, that wasn't the experience of life. Like, the experience of life was like the things you did with your friends outside, the things you did, the things you experienced. Like, I don't think I ever really talked about the cartoons we watched, and we all watched the same cartoons. Like, between me and my brother and stuff, we talked about cartoons, but like, between me and my friends and all that, we just did what we were doing. We went outside, like someone was knocking on the door and we went and played. We went and did stuff. That was the experience of life. And when we were talking even when I talk to adults, it's like I'm talking to them based off of like what's in the room, and they're talking to me based off what's in the room. And even when I'm sitting around the adults, because there's numerous times where it's like there's this really cool thing where if you're buying food from the meat from the butcher, for instance, you'd buy your meat that you're going to be taking home. The butcher's going to do his cuts and all that stuff. And then you buy some other meat that you go to the back of the butcher and everyone's just frying it. And they're just like frying their meat, like roasting it and everything. And you're just chopping up and just everyone's just eating each other's meat. You're all talking. And there's a vibe going on there.
That's cool.
And it's like no one's saying anything. It's not weird. It's just like, yeah, there's meat here. We bought some extra meat. You bought some extra meat. We're eating meat. And like someone's made sudzo, made some food over this side. And like everyone's just kind of talking and having this thing there and drinking and stuff. So you do get to sit around the adults and hear the way they talk. And it's sort of the same thing. It is just like, what's going on with you? But that thing we're talking about, it's not water cooler talk. Genuinely you want to know what's going on. Anything interesting happen? Oh, you're doing this? Oh, I can help you with that. We can do this. Let's do that. And you're finding there's a connection here where everyone here kind of seems to be like, there's a lot more water cooler talk. Where it is like, I'm talking to you because I'm supposed to interact with you, because if I don't interact with you, you'll think something's wrong.
Yeah, it's not real conversation.
Yeah, it's like, it's filler. There needs to be something there to make it known that. That's why like I never really do water cooler talk. Like here, I make the most offensive jokes ever. Like I've made fun of a Pakistani guy and I've made 9/11 jokes. I've made fun of like the white guys. I've made fun of me being black repeatedly. I like make fun of all the jokes. So I'm like, all that shit needs to get out the window. Because you need to know, like if you're in a room with me, there's no filler here. If you want to talk, we can talk. If you want to have fun, we can have fun. You can be your honest self. There's no glass you have to walk on here where you're like, fuck, if I say the wrong thing, Alfred might, this guy might, that guy might. It's like, nah, just be yourself. Actually relax. It's all good. Like everything's cool here. No one is that ego driven or that ill-filled. And we all respect you all as people. Like,
So So how did the forums help you?
Because the forums are just that. Like 4chan was the best solely because of that. It's not that good now, but it used to be the best because the whole idea of 4chan is you couldn't come on and be like, I'm a nuclear physicist. You have to listen to me.
Yeah.
You couldn't use your...
No one gives a shit.
Yeah. If you wanted to win an argument on 4chan, you actually had to have the facts.
Yeah.
And you have to win them on your merits and on the merit of your argument and the way you argue. So, like, if you're just coming in on, like, I'm a black man, you should understand my... they'll make fun of you right away, and they'll insult you till you leave. Like, if you want to get the quickest way to just get a whole bunch of, like, racist shit said to you is, like, try saying, like, I'm a black guy, this is why you should respect black people. It won't work. It won't work at all. They'll tell you to go away, and they'll tell you to go away in the worst way possible. And it's not... Once I was there, I was, like, learning, like, oh, they're not saying that because they're, like, racist and things. It's because, like, you're fucking up the... dynamic. The dynamic is like, if you want to make your point based off of its merits, because the point that's been made against you, no matter how abhorrent the point is being made based off of this person's evidence. And if you actually can convince them or other people based off of your evidence, you've actually moved forward in the conversation. You're not just like offended and saying something.
Yeah.
So it's like, seeing that and being like, oh, cool, there's other people doing that as well. So this wasn't just an experience in Zimbabwe that was happening. And then realizing like that layer between like water cooler talk. Because when I saw water cooler talk, I'm like, wow, you really care that Jenny got a perm? Why are you bringing that up? I'm so confused. I guess all these Westerners just talk about perms and stuff and shoes and their nails. I'm not realizing it's just blur talk for the sake of blur talk and keeping connection. I'm thinking these people are seriously having serious conversations.
Yeah.
I can understand sarcasm and tone and all that stuff. So even then, but I'm like, the subject matter of what you're talking about, does it matter that much? And then when you realize that's what was the main shift that helped with forums and just like consuming some kind of media podcast as well, and just seeing people have that contrast between when they want to have a real conversation and a real connection versus when they're just kind of talking to a person.
Yeah.
And seeing like an interview versus like a podcast is like one of those perfect contrasts. Like, oh, so this is what's going on. And then learning that myself, like sometimes people talk like this so that they just
filling space. Yeah.
This one's okay. So this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And that level of step back let me like actually sit through, because when you don't know that and you're just flowing through it, you either start taking every single conversation seriously, or you talk none of them seriously at all. I went down the route where I stopped taking any of them seriously. I'm like, I don't care about shoes that much. Why are you guys like so hyped about shoes? Like, why are you going woo when you take a shot? It makes no sense. Like, I took the same shot you did. I didn't feel like saying woo. Like, and it's like, it like dulled a lot of the fun because I'm like not seeing where the hype was.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And just coming back to the 3D art thing, because I'm always I'm going down this rabbit hole about AI at the present moment.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious as to your thoughts on it, because you know, like there's ones where you can tell it to produce you an image of XYZ doing XYZ, like the weirdest random shit, and suddenly the AI can like produce this image.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about AI and the 3D art space?
In 3D art, I'm. It's like we've made a lot of movies about where this goes.
Yeah.
And then like our insistent is not going to go that way while following every single thing those movies are doing.
Yeah.
And like for me, AI, I used to be supportive of it when people would say stuff like AI will make it so that all the stuff is being done by the machines. That way we can do our thing. We can do art. We can do blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sure, but humans are lazy. Like, humans are inherently lazy. They will, and it was one of those things like AI, they always said like a computer will never be able to write a song for you. It'll never be, I'm like.
And then that Drake and the Weeknd song came out.
Exactly. And I'm just like, look how quickly we're letting it do that.
Yeah.
And then and the worst part is like, look how quickly we are to actually buy those things. Like if a producer decided instead now when you sign an artist, you're not signing them. You're just signing
AI
their voice.
Yeah.
That artist now, and people would quickly buy it because that oh, he sounds very nice. I like his voice. And the lyric he's saying, the lyrics that are being said are being said. And the artist can show up to the concert and like jump around or whatever he wants to do. But like at that point, you've taken the human element out of it solely because you like good earworm. And human beings are quick to do that. And I saw it start happening in the art sphere for sure, because what happened was AI basically destroyed the commercial artist. Like, there used to be a whole field, and I think it's still there, but it's not that much right now. It used to be a field, like, if you went on Twitter, where people would be like, hey, can you commission me this? I want you to draw this with the turtle with this thing on because it represents my grandpa. It represents this. And AI just destroyed that, because it's like, I want you to give me a turtle in a representative of a cyberpunk universe while using a particular art style like this. And it just does it. And it's like, the worst part was, it does it by stealing other people's art. Like, it references every single person's art and like, this is all the cyberpunk art styles we have from other people's legitimate art it didn't ask for or whatever, and then makes an amalgamation of that. It's a souped up filter for the most part. Yeah. But it killed all those artists, because it's like, why would I pay you $30
when I can just
and wait 2 weeks for you to make this thing when I can make it on a computer in 2 minutes? And it's like, that idea that they were saying, like, it won't replace humans when it comes to like art and songs and the things that make us human. It's like, yeah, but humans will do that quickly. They'll replace us with machines as quickly as they can, because you should, if you're thinking that, you should inherently be like, oh, I'm just going to pay the artist because that's a person making it and it's going to have a person's touch. But the moment human beings will always pick convenience. Like, the moment it's like, oh, it's more convenient and comfortable for me to do this, they will slowly pick convenience till they die, like till it implodes backwards. And it's like, kind of like, if we dovetail back to like the education things, like, we're educating to convenience to the point that we're going to forget, like, the whole point of educating is to educate. And you're going to wonder, like, why are these kids so dumb? Like, one of my friends is a school teacher now at the same high school I went to, and he's like, he jokes about dunking on the kids who like roast him, but like, one of the like sad parts was like, they went to the swimming carnival, and then one of the teachers who I was there with was like, don't blame me, blame your parents. They never took you to a lake on a weekend and swam with you and taught you how to swim, because all these kids are just unathletic for the most part and a bunch of other things. So it's just like, they're not being taught to do any of those things. And then when it comes to the school's hands are tied so much. Like, if kids are fighting in a class now, before it's like the teacher can separate you. Now, if kids are fighting in a class, my friend was just like, he has to stand in the corner and in a calm voice, because you can't raise your voice to the kids, tell these high school students in an all-boys school, hey guys, please stop. Hey guys, please stop. And then call the principal or whoever it is in to come in, and then also say the same thing, because he also can't touch or separate the students until they stop. And it's like, at some point we missed the rubber for the road there, and you're forgetting the point of teaching these people. And I think when it comes to AI, human beings are quick. We're quick to let ourselves get so comfortable. If an AI overlord was like, I'll be your president, guys, you won't have to ever vote ever again. That $50 fine you'll pay if you don't vote, gone. Just put me in charge. I guarantee you half this country votes for them. Solely not because they're evil or anything, just because it's convenient. It's like, wait, I get to lose an inconvenience? Great. But like, because that idea of like greater responsibility is being like gutted out of most Western society in general, there's nothing stopping it. Before, there used to be, if you brought that up to, I think, maybe like the boomers, and like, hey, we'll have a robot computer, it will make your life infinitely easier, extremely easier, but we'll make it so that there'll be no human artists whatsoever. I think that would have been like, nah, there's no passion in that. There's no people in that. You got to, people come first. Yeah. Right? Like, even our generation, even the generation like just before us. But I think the next two generations, I don't care. Yeah. And even some of our generation don't care. Yeah. It's like, oh, convenient? Yeah, we'll do that. Why would I pay who for? Wait, how long? No. Why? I want my thing now. Give it to me now. I want it now, as quickly as you can possibly give it to me. And you're telling me that if I don't like it, I don't have to pay again. I can just change a parameter and you'll give it to me again.
Yeah.
Great. It's like you're losing. There's a point where it's like some stuff has to be hard for the sake of being hard.
Yeah.
Some stuff has to be risk. Taking away risk from life makes life shit. But people don't realize that till the risk is gone and life is shit. And they're like, why does my life feel so empty? It's like, because there's nothing. You're in a padded cell.
Yeah.
You're in a padded cell and
fucked.
it's safe.
We're fucked. We're fucked, everyone. It's all over. Fucking we're dead.
Yeah. If people keep... I want to be optimistic about AI, but like when you see the way it's being adapted, it's like the music thing is scary right now. So it's like, oh, great.
Even
you can just replace voices?
Yeah.
Let's do that. It's like...
Music, anything artistic, writing, like all the websites that are built around having people come back to the website for ad revenue, as an example, because they write articles. Like, what's the point in having these websites when you could just ask AI to give you the answer to write you an essay? Like I said, I think I asked it when I was mucking around, but I said, write me a dissertation on something very esoteric, right? And I know it's done is it's like scraped a whole bunch of different articles and pieced it together, and you read it and you just go, what the fuck, like.
Yeah. And you're like, it's getting better. And it's getting way better. It's like, it's going to at some point be able to like piece those things together in a way that is like unique based off of like wording and shit. But it's like, again, like you're saying, it's like, and some people go like, yeah, well, we lose industries all the time when there's revolutions in technology. It's like, yeah, that's true. But like,
the funny thing about this revolution, though, I think the industries that we lose from this will actually bring us back to I guess what people would say are harder industries in terms of like agriculture.
Yes.
So we go back to the basics, right? What are the basics? Food. We need people that can create food, grow food, so to speak, or butcher cattle and all that sort of stuff. And then from that, then it's like, okay, you need logistics to actually get that stuff around. You need storage, you need cold, like refrigeration and all that sort of stuff. Then you need shelter, construction, people who are tradespeople. Like they're the industries that can't technically be replaced at the present moment.
Yes. And being me, the eternal pessimist, is like, at least from like, because I watch a lot, because where I work in 3D art, but we do a lot of like training and a bunch of stuff and future designs and all this other stuff for when we pitch clients. Just me being the eternal pessimist and like watching what I watch is like all those industries you listed are all already on the path to being automated by various reasons. Like, for instance, slaughtering animals is like, well, human beings have been very unethical at slaughtering animals this entire time. You know what's very ethical? Having a machine just do it for you really quickly. Or even better, how about you don't have the animal at all? We just grow it in the lab.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're finding ways to convenience ourselves out. And that's the difference in that like every technological revolution, like the Industrial Revolution replaced a bunch of things and jobs were let out by other people. Like some jobs, you wouldn't be able to change if you're a professional, like horse carriage changer, you lost your job, but then you could get another one in a car factory or something like that.
Yeah.
We're now actively replacing those jobs with an entity that isn't human and then shutting out the humans from being able to access it ever again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the difference in that in this particular revolution is like, it is basically like, cool, this industry is now gone. Here are all the people working on it now. And all the people are machines and the AI. And it's like, once that like keeps tipping over, it's like you'll get a few programmers once or twice pressing a button to make sure AI works the way it's supposed to work. And that's it. Yeah. You won't be able to, you won't have people replacing it. And that's, I'm hopeful that like some countries I think some countries still have that thing where they're like, they are built on like a duty of like, some shits needs to be hard for the sake of being hard. But some countries won't. It's just, and it's not, it's an unfortunate domino of events in the fact that like interest rates and inflation, everything is way harder for most people. Like in general, like life is already like getting pretty shit as it is. Yeah. And then to convince someone to not take a convenience is almost it's like an asshole thing to do. Like, yeah, I know your life's really, really hard right now. Make it harder on yourself. Pay $20 to this person and wait 4 months for the little temporary happiness you can get. It's like, okay, maybe not.
Yeah, it's I've been thinking about it a lot just from that perspective, like especially when it comes to say algorithmic trading. So like all these stock markets, crypto shares, all these sorts of things where they can essentially be, why would you have somebody emotional trading? Like the best traders are the ones that are the least emotional, right? Let's just purely look at the statistics and the numbers and do the technical analysis. And then, theoretically, AI would be able to do that better than most.
Yeah.
And then at which point it's like, okay, what do I need all these people that work in this finance industry?
Yeah.
Right. But then it's like, who's now making the money? Like, what does it actually mean? Like, if money's now just generated, automatically, well, then it's sort of lost its value, hasn't it?
We're slowly, like, it starts there, and then slowly we'll start replacing people in government with like, oh, well, this particular government job can be done by a machine. And I
guess the main question is, would we pay to go to an event to watch, 8 fights where it's robot versus robot?
I think, funny enough, that might be the only thing that stays. Like, people punching each other in the face might be the only thing that stays, solely because people will do that on the streets on their own. If AI takes over everything, there'll still be a bum on the street fighting each other, and there'll still be a group of people watching it and be like, like, it'll never go away, because at the very least, that's the last thing we have. But then our like robot overlords would be like, God damn, stupid monkeys.
All right. On that note, if people want to find you, obviously it's the Maker Jack.
Yes.
Right. And then is your fight confirmed?
Yes.
Or yes.
Yes. My opponent has signed the contract allegedly. So I have a fight June 24th.
Hey.
Pro debut. It's going to be fun as all hell.
Yep. Beatdown Promotions, was it?
Yep.
Okay. And so follow the Maker Jack, and we'll catch up with you guys next time.
Yeah. Thank you.